On correcting mistaken ideas, in the party, December. There are various non-proletarian ideas in the Communist Party organization in the Fourth Red Army which greatly hinder the application of the party's correct line. Unless these ideas are thoroughly corrected, the Fourth Army cannot possibly shoulder the task assigned to it in China's great revolutionary struggle. The source of such incorrect ideas in this party organization lies, of course, in the fact that its basic units are composed largely of peasants and old elements of petty bourgeois origin. Yet the failure of the party leading bodies to wage a concerted and determined struggle against these incorrect ideas and to educate the members in the party's core line is also an important cause of their existence and growth. In accordance with the spirit of the September letter of the Central Committee, this Congress hereby points out the manifestations of various non-proletarian ideas in the party organization in the Fourth Army, their sources, and the methods of correcting them, and call upon all comrades to eliminate them thoroughly. On the purely military viewpoint, the purely military viewpoint is very highly developed among number of comrades in the Red Army. It manifests itself as follows. This article was a resolution drawn up by Comrade Mao Zedong for the 9th Party Congress of the Fourth Army of the Red Army. The building of the Chinese People's Armed Forces was a difficult process. The Chinese Red Army, which became the 8th and new 4th Armies during the War of Resistance against Japan and is now the People's Liberation Army, was created on August 1, 1927, during the Nanchang Uprising, and by December 1929 had been in existence. 105-106 MAOTSE Tung, 1. These comrades regard military affairs and politics as opposed to each other and refuse to recognize that military affairs are on one means of accomplishing political tasks. Some even say, if you are good militarily, naturally you are good politically. If you are good militarily, you cannot be any good politically. This is to a step further and give military affairs a leading position over politics too. They think that the task of the Red Army, like that of the White Army, is merely to fight. They do not understand that the Chinese Red Army is an armed body for carrying out the politic tasks of the revolution. Especially at present, the Red Army should certainly not confine itself to fighting. Besides fighting to destroy the enemy's military strength, it should shoulder such important tasks doing propaganda among the masses, organizing the masses, arming them, helping them to establish revolutionary political power, setting up party organizations. The Red Army fights not merely for the sake of fighting but in order to conduct propaganda among the masses, organize them, arm them, and help them to establish revolutionary political power. Without these objectives, fighting loses meaning and the Red Army loses the reason for its existence. 3. Hence, organizationally, these comrades subordinate the departments of the Red Army doing political work to those doing military work, and put forward the slogan, "Let Army Headquarters handle outside matters." If allowed to develop, this idea will involve the danger of estrangement from the masses, control of the government by the army and departure from proletarian leadership. It would be to take the path of warlordism like the Kuomintang Armed Force. At the same time, in propaganda work they overlook the importance of propaganda teams. On the question of mass organization, they neglect the organizing of soldiers' committees in the army and the organizing of the local workers and peasants. As a result, both propaganda and organizational work are abandoned. For over 2 years. During this period the Communist Party organization in the Army learned a great deal and gained quite a rich store of experience in the coup of combating various mistaken ideas. The resolution summed up this experience that enabled the Red Army to build itself entirely on a Marxist-Leninist basis and eliminate all the influences of armies of the old type. It was carried out not only the Fourth Army but also in all other units of the Red Army successively. In this way the whole Chinese Red Army became a genuine army of the people in every respect. In the last 30 years or so the Chinese People's Armed Forces have made tremendous developments and innovations in their party activities and political will which now present a very different picture, but the basic line remains the same that laid down in this resolution. On correcting mistaken ideas in the party 10, 5. They become conceited when a battle is won and dispirited when a battle is lost. 6. Selfish departmentalism. They think only of the Fourth Army and do not realize that it is an important task of the Red Army to arm the local masses. This is cliquism in a magnified form. 7. Unable to see beyond their limited environment in the Fourth Army, a few comrades believe that no other revolutionary forces exist, hence their extreme addiction to the idea of conserving strength and avoiding action. This is a remnant of opportunism. 8. Some comrades, disregarding the subjective and objective conditions, suffer from the malady of revolutionary impetuosity. They will not take pains to do minute and detailed work among the masses but, riddled with illusions, want only to do big things. This is remnant of putschism. 1. The sources of the purely military viewpoint are 1. A low political level. From this flows the failure to recognize the role of political leadership in the army and to recognize that the Red Army and the White Army are fundamentally different. 2. The mentality of mercenaries. Many prisoners captured in past battles have joined the Red Army, and such elements bring with them a markedly mercenary outlook, thereby providing a basis in the lower ranks for the purely military viewpoint. 3. From the two preceding causes there arises a third, overconfidence in military strength and absence of confidence in the strength of the masses of the people. 4. The party's failure actively to attend to and discuss military work is also a reason for the emergence of the purely military viewpoint among a number of comrades. The methods of correction are as follows. 1. Raise the political level in the party by means of education. Destroy the theoretical roots of the purely military viewpoint, and be clear on the fundamental difference between the Red Army and the White Army. At the same time, eliminate the remnants of opportunism and putschism and break down the selfish departmentalism of the Fourth Army. 2. Intensify the political training of officers and men and especially the education of ex-prisoners. At the same time, as far as possible let the local government select workers and peasants experienced in struggle to join the Red Army, thus organizationally weakening or even eradicating the purely military viewpoint. 108 MAOTSE tongue. 3. Arouse the local party organizations to criticize the PAR organizations in the Red Army and the organs of mass political power to criticize the Red Army itself, in order to influence the PAR organizations and the officers and men of the Red Army. 4. The party must actively attend to and discuss military war. All the work must be discussed and decided upon by the party before being carried out by the rank and file. 5. Draw up Red Army rules and regulations which clearly define its tasks, the relationship between its military and its politic apparatus, the relationship between the Red Army and the mass of the people, and the powers and functions of the soldiers commit and their relationship with the military and political organizations. On ultra-democracy, since the Fourth Army of the Red Army accepted the directive of the Central Committee, there has been a great decrease in manifestations of ultra-democracy. For example, party decisions are now carried out fairly well. And no longer does anyone bring up so erroneous demands as that the Red Army should apply Democrat centralism from the bottom to the top, or should let the lower level discuss all problems first, and then let the higher levels decide actually. However, this decrease is only temporary and superficial and does not mean that ultra-democratic ideas had already been eliminated. In other words, ultra-democracy is still deep-rooted in the minds of many comrades. Witness the various expressions of reluctance to carry out party decisions. The methods of correction are as follows. 1. In the sphere of theory, destroy the roots of ultra-democrat. First, it should be pointed out that the danger of ultra-democrat lies in the fact that it damages or even completely wrecks the PAR organization and weakens or even completely undermines the party fighting capacity, rendering the party incapable of fulfilling its fighting tasks and thereby causing the defeat of the revolution. Next, should be pointed out that the source of ultra-democracy consists the petty bourgeoisie's individualistic aversion to discipline. This characteristic is brought into the party, it develops into ULTR democratic ideas politically and organizationally. These ideas are utterly incompatible with the fighting tasks of the proletariat. On correcting mistaken ideas in the party. 10. 2. In the sphere of organization, ensure democracy under centralized guidance. It should be done on the following lines. 1. The leading bodies of the party must give a correct line of guidance and find solutions when problems arise, in order to establish themselves as centers of leadership. 2. The higher bodies must be familiar with the life of masses and with the situation in the lower bodies so as to have an objective basis for correct guidance. 3. No party organization at any level should make casual decisions in solving problems. Once a decision is reached, it must be firmly carried out. 4. All decisions of any importance made by the party higher bodies must be promptly transmitted to the lower body and the party rank and file. The method is to call meetings activists or general membership meetings of the party branches even of the columns too, when circumstances permit, and to assign people to make reports at such meetings. 5. The lower bodies of the party and the party rank and file must discuss the higher bodies' directives in detail in order to understand their meaning thoroughly and decide on the method of carrying them out. On the disregard of organizational discipline in the party organization in the Fourth Army manifests itself as follows: a failure of the minority to submit to the majority. For example, when a minority finds its motion voted down, it does not sincerely carry out the party decisions. The methods of correction are as follows. 1. At meetings, all participants should be encouraged to voice their opinions as fully as possible. The rights and wrongs in any controversy should be clarified without compromise or glossing over in order to reach a clear-cut conclusion. What cannot be settled at one meeting should be discussed at another, provided there is no interference with the work. 110 MAOTSE tongue. 2. One requirement of party discipline is that the minority should submit to the majority. If the view of the minority has been rejected, it must support the decision passed by the majority. If necessary, it can bring up the matter for reconsideration at the next meeting, but apart from that it must not act against the decision in any way. B. Criticism made without regard to organizational discipline. 1. Inter-party criticism is a weapon for strengthening the PAR organization and increasing its fighting capacity. In the party organization of the Red Army, however, criticism is not always of character, and sometimes turns into personal attack. As a result, damages the party organization as well as individuals. This is manifestation of petty bourgeois individualism. The method of correction is to help party members understand that the purpose of criticism is to increase the party's fighting capacity in order to achieve victory in the class struggle and that it should not be used as a means of personal attack. 2. Many party members make their criticisms not inside, but outside the party. The reason is that the general membership has not yet grasped the importance of the party organization, its meaning and so forth, and sees no difference between criticism inside and outside the organization. The method of correction is to educate party members so that they understand the importance of party organization and make their criticisms of party committees comrades at party meetings. On absolute equalitarianism became quite serious in the Red Army at one time. Here are some examples. On the matter of allowance to wounded soldiers, there were objections to differentiating but to light in serious cases, and the demand was raised for equal allowances for all. When officers rode on horseback, it was regarded as something necessary for performing their duties but as a sign of inequality. Absolutely equal distribution of supplies was demand, and there was objection to somewhat larger allotments in special cases. In the hauling of rice, the demand was made that all should carry the same load on their backs, irrespective of age or physical condition. Equality was demanded in the allotment of billets, and correcting mistaken ideas in the party 11. Headquarters would be abused for occupying larger rooms. Equality was demanded in the assignment of fatigue duties, and there was unwillingness to do a little more than the next man. It even went so far that when there were 2 wounded men but only one stretcher, neither could be carried away because each refused to yield priority to the other. Absolute equalitarianism, as shown in these examples, is still very serious among officers and soldiers of the Red Army. Absolute equalitarianism, like ultra-democracy in political matters, is the product of a handicraft and small peasant economy, only difference being that the one manifests itself in material affairs while the other manifests itself in political affairs. The method of correction. We should point out that, before abolition of capitalism, absolute equalitarianism is a mere illusion o peasants and small proprietors, and that even under socialism there can be no absolute equality, for material things will then be distributed on the principle of from each according to his ability, to each according to his work as well as on that of meeting the needs of work. The distribution of material things in the Red Army must be more or less equal, as in the case of equal pay for officers and men because this is required by the present circumstances of the struggle. But absolute equalitarianism beyond reason must be opposed because it is not required by the struggle. On the contrary, it hinders the struggle. On subjectivism, subjectivism exists to a serious degree among some party members, causing great harm to the analysis of the political situation and the guidance of the work. The reason is that subjective analysis of a political situation and subjective guidance of work inevitably result either in opportunism or in putschism. As for subjective criticism, loose and groundless talk or suspiciousness, such practices inside the party often breed unprincipled disputes and undermine party organization. Another point that should be mentioned in connection with inter-party criticism is that some comrades ignore the major issues and confine their attention to minor points when they make their criticism. They do not understand that the main task of criticism is to point out political and organizational mistakes. As to personal shortcomings 112 MAOTSE tongue, unless they are related to political and organizational mistakes, there is no need to be overcritical and to embarrass the comrades concerned. Moreover, once such criticism develops, there is the great danger that the party members will concentrate entirely on main faults, and everyone will become timid and overcautious and forward the party's political tasks. The main method of correction is to educate party members that a political and scientific spirit pervades their thinking and the party life. To this end we must, 1. Teach party members to apt the Marxist-Leninist method in analyzing a political situation appraising the class forces, instead of making a subjective analysis and appraisal. 2. Direct the attention of party members to SOC and economic investigation and study, so as to determine the tactics of struggle and methods of work, and help comrades to understand that without investigation of actual conditions they will fall into the pit of fantasy and putschism. And, 3. In inter-party criticism, against subjectivism, arbitrariness and the vulgarization of criticist statements should be based on facts and criticism should center on politics. On individualism, the tendency towards individualism in the Red Army Party organization manifests itself as follows. 1. Retaliation. Some comrades, after being criticized inside party by a soldier comrade, look for opportunities to retaliate outside the party, and one way is to beat or abuse the comrade in question. They also seek to retaliate within the party. You have criticized M at this meeting, so I'll find some way to pay you back at the next. Such retaliation arises from purely personal considerations, to neglect of the interests of the class and of the party as a whole. Target is not the enemy class, but individuals in our own ranks. It is corrosive which weakens the organization and its fighting capacity. 2. Small group mentality. Some comrades consider only the interests of their own small group and ignore the general although on the surface this does not seem to be the pursuit of person interests, in reality it exemplifies the narrowest individualism and a strong corrosive and centrifugal effect. Small group mentality is to be rife in the Red Army, and although there has been some correcting mistaken ideas in the Party 11, improvement as a result of criticism, there are still survivals and further effort is needed to overcome it. 3. The employee mentality. Some comrades do not understand that the Party and the Red Army, of which they are members, are both instruments for carrying out the tasks of the revolution. They do not realize that they themselves are makers of the revolution, do think that their responsibility is merely to their individual superior and not to the revolution. This passive mentality of an employee of the revolution is also a manifestation of individualism. I explains why there are not very many activists who work unconditionally for the revolution. Unless it is eliminated, the number of activists will not grow and the heavy burden of the revolution will remain on the shoulders of a small number of people, much to the detriment of the struggle. 4. Pleasure-seeking. In the Red Army there are also quite few people whose individualism finds expression in pleasure-seeking. They always hope that their unit will march into big cities. They want to go there not to work but to enjoy themselves. The last thing they want is to work in the red areas where life is hard. 5. Passivity. Some comrades become passive and stop working whenever anything goes against their wishes. This is mainly due to lack of education, though sometimes it is also due to the leadership and proper conduct of affairs, assignment of work or enforcement of discipline. 6. The desire to leave the army. The number of people who ask for transfers from the Red Army to local work is on the increase. The reason for this does not lie entirely with the individual but also with 1. The material hardships of life in the Red Army, 2. Exhaustion after long struggle, and 3. The leadership and proper conduct of affairs, assignment of work or enforcement of discipline. The method of correction is primarily to strengthen education so as to rectify individualism ideologically. Next, it is to conduct affairs, make assignments and enforce discipline in a proper way. In addition, ways must be found to improve the material life of the Red Army, and every available opportunity must be utilized for rest and rehabilitation in order to improve material conditions in our educational work. We must explain that in its social origin individualism is a reflection within the party of petty bourgeois and bourgeois ideas. 114 MAOTSE tongue, on the ideology of roving rebel bands. The political ideology of roving rebel bands has emerged in the Red Army because the proportion of vagabond elements is large, because there are great masses of vagabonds in China, especially in the southern provinces. This ideology manifests itself as follow. 1. Some people want to increase our political influence only by means of roving guerrilla actions, but are unwilling to increase it by undertaking the arduous task of building up base areas and establishing the people's political power. 2. In expanding the Red Army, some people follow the line of hiring men and buying horses or recruiting deserters and accepting mutineers. 3. Rather than the lie of expanding the local Red Guards and the local troops and developing the main forces of the Red Army. 3. Some people lack the patience to carry on arduous struggles together with the mass and only want to go to the big cities to eat and drink to their hair content. All these manifestations of the ideology of roving Reeb seriously hamper the Red Army in performing its proper task. Consequently, its eradication is an important objective in the ideologic struggle within the Red Army Party organization. It must be understood that the ways of roving rebels of the Huan Chao 4 or Li Chuan type are not permissible under present-day conditions. The methods of correction are as follows. 1. Intensify education, criticize incorrect ideas, and eradicate the ideology of roving rebel bands. 2. Intensify education among the basic sections of the Red Army and among recently recruited captives to counter the vagabond outlaw. 3. Draw active workers and peasants experienced in struggle into the ranks of the Red Army so as to change its composition. 4. Create new units of the Red Army from among the mass of militant workers and peasants. On the remnants of Putschism, the party organization in the Red Army has already made struggles against Putschism, but not yet to a sufficient extent. Therefore, remnants of this ideology still exist in the Red Army. The ON correcting mistaken ideas in the party. 11. Manifestations are 1. Blind action regardless of subjective and objective conditions. 2. Inadequate and irresolute application of party's policies for the cities. 3. Slack military discipline, especially in moments of defeat. 4. Acts of house burning by some units. And 5. The practices of shooting deserters and of inflicting corporal punishment, both of which smack of Putschism. In its social origins, Putschism is a combination of lumpen proletarian and petty bourgeois ideology. The methods of correction are as follows. 1. Eradicate Putschism ideologically. 2. Correct purchased behavior through rules, regulations and policies. Notes. 1. For a brief period after the defeat of the revolution in 1927, a left Putschist tendency arose in the Communist Party. Regarding the Chinese Revolution as permanent revolution, and the revolutionary situation in China as a permanent upsurge, the Putschist comrades refused to organize an orderly retreat and, adopting the methods of commandism and relying only on a small number of party members and a small section of the masses, erroneously attempted to stage a series of local uprisings throughout the country, which had no prospect of success. Such Putschist activities were widespread at the end of 1927 but gradually subsided in the beginning of 1928, though sentiments in favor of Putschism still survived among some comrades too. In the guerrilla system of organization, a column corresponded to a division I, the regular army, with a complement much more flexible and usually much smaller than that of a regular division. 116 MAOTSE tongue, 5 Li. A single spark can start a prairie fire, January. Some comrades in our party still do not know how to appraise the current situation correctly and how to settle the attendant question of what action to take. Though they believe that a revolutionary high tide is inevitable, they do not believe it to be imminent. Therefore, they disapprove of the plan to take Yangtze and only approve of roving guerrilla actions in the 3 areas on the borders of Fujian, Guangdong and Yangtze. At the same time, as they do not have a deep understanding of what it means to establish red political power in the guerrilla areas, they do not have a deep understanding of the idea of accelerating the nationwide revolutionary high tide through the consolidation and expansion of red political power. They seem to think that, since the revolutionary high tide is still remote, it will be labor loss to attempt to establish political power by hard work. Instead, they want to extend our political influence through the easier method of roving guerrilla actions, and, once the mass throughout the country have been won over, or more or less won over, they want to launch a nationwide armed insurrection which, with the participation of the Red Army, would become a great nationwide revolution. Their theory that we must first win over the mass on a country-wide scale and in all regions and then establish political power does not accord with the actual state of the Chinese Revolution. This theory derives mainly from the failure to understand clearly that China is a semi-colonial country for which many imperialist powers are contending. If one dearly understands this, one will understand first why the unusual phenomenon of prolonged and time-led warfare within the ruling classes is only to be found in China, why this warfare is steadily growing fiercer and spreading, and why this was a letter written by Comrade Mao Zedong in criticism of certain pessimistic views then existing in the party. 117-118 MAOTSE tongue, there has never been a unified regime. Secondly, one will understand the gravity of the peasant problem and hence why uprisings have developed on the present country-wide scale. Third, one will understand the correctness of the slogan of workers of peasants' democratic political power. Fourthly, one will understand another unusual phenomenon, which is also absent outside China and which follows from the first, that in China alone there is prolonged and tangled warfare within the ruling classes, namely, the existence and development of the Red Army and the guerrilla force, and together with them, the existence and development of small R areas encircled by the white regime. Fifthly, one will understand that in semi-colonial China the establishment and expansion of the Red Army, the guerrilla forces and the red areas is the highest for a peasant struggle under the leadership of the proletariat, the inevitable outcome of the growth of the semi-colonial peasant struggle, and undoubtedly the most important factor in accelerating the revolutionary high tide throughout the country. And sixthly, one will also understand that the policy which merely calls for roving guerrilla actions cannot accomplish the task of accelerating this nationwide revolutionary high tide, while the kind of policy adopted by Chu Ti and Mao Zedong and also by Fang Chi-min is undoubtedly correct, that is, the policy of establishing base areas, of systematically setting up political power, of deepening the agrarian revolution, expanding the people's armed forces by a comprehensive process building up first the township Red Guards, then the district R Guards, then the county Red Guards, then the local Red Army troop all the way up to the regular Red Army troops, of spreading politic power by advancing in a series of waves, etc., etc. Only thus is possible to build the confidence of the revolutionary masses throughout the country, as the Soviet Union has built it throughout the war. Only thus is it possible to create tremendous difficulties for the reactionary ruling classes, shake their foundations and hasten their intern disintegration. Only thus is it really possible to create a Red Arm which will become the chief weapon for the great revolution of the future. In short, only thus is it possible to hasten the revolution a high tide. Comrades who suffer from revolutionary impetuosity overestimate the subjective forces of the revolution too and underestimate the fork of the counter-revolution. Such an appraisal stems mainly from subjectivism. In the end, it undoubtedly leads to putschism. On the off a single spark can start a prairie fire 11, hand. Underestimating the subjective forces of the revolution and overestimating the forces of the counter-revolution would also constitute an improper appraisal and be certain to produce bad results of another kind. Therefore, in judging the political situation in China it is necessary to understand the following. 1. Although the subjective forces of the revolution in China are now weak, so also are all organizations, organs of political power, armed forces, political parties, etc. of the reactionary ruling classes resting as they do on the backward and fragile social and economic structure of China. This helps to explain why revolution cannot break out at once in the countries of Western Europe where, although subjective forces of revolution are now perhaps somewhat stronger than in China, the forces of the reactionary ruling classes are many times stronger. In China the revolution will undoubtedly move toward a high tide more rapidly, for although the subjective forces of revolution at present are weak, the forces of the counter-revolution are relatively weak too. 2. The subjective forces of the revolution have indeed been greatly weakened since the defeat of the revolution in 1927. The remaining forces are very small and those comrades who judge by appearance alone naturally feel pessimistic. But if we judge by essentials, it is quite another story. Here we can apply the old Chinese saying, a single spark can start a prairie fire. In other words, our forces although small at present, will grow very rapidly. In the condition prevailing in China, their growth is not only possible but indeed inevitable, as the May 30th movement and the Great Revolution which followed have fully proved. When we look at a thing, we must examine its essence and treat its appearance merely as an usher of the threshold, and once we cross the threshold, we must grasp the essence of the thing. This is the only reliable and scientific method of analysis. 3. Similarly, in appraising the counter-revolutionary forces, we must never look merely at their appearance, but should examine their essence. In the initial period of our independent regime in Hunan-Kiangsi border area, some comrades genuinely believed incorrect appraisal made by the Hunan Provincial Committee and regarded the class enemy as not worth a rap. The two descriptive terms, terribly shaky, and extremely panicky, which are standing jokes to this day, were used by the Hunan Provincial Committee at the time in appraising the Hunan Rule 120 MAOTSE Tung, Lu Tiping 3. Such an appraisal necessarily led to putschism in the political sphere. But during the 4 months from November that year to February 1929, before the war between Chiang Kai-shek and the Guangxi warlords, when the enemy's Third Joint Suppression Expedition 5 was approaching the Qingkang Mountains, some comrades asked the question, how long can we keep the R flag flying? As a matter of fact, the struggle in China to Britain, the United States and Japan had by then become quite open. A state of tangled warfare between Chiang Kai-shek, the Quang clique and Feng Yuxiang was taking shape. Hence it was actually the time when the counter-revolutionary tide had begun to ebb, the revolutionary tide to rise again. Yet pessimistic ideas were to found not only in the Red Army and local party organizations. The Central Committee was misled by appearances and adopted pessimistic tone. Its February letter is evidence of the pessimist analysis made in the party at that time. 4. The objective situation today is still such that comrades see only the superficial appearance and not the essence of what before them are liable to be misled. In particular, when our comrade working in the Red Army are defeated in battle or encircled or pursued by strong enemy forces, they often unwittingly generalize and exaggerate their momentary, specific and limited situation, as though the situation in China and the world as a whole gave no cause. Optimism and the prospects of victory for the revolution were remote. The reason they seize on the appearance and brush aside the essence in their observation of things is that they have not made a scientific analysis of the essence of the overall situation. The question whether there will soon be a revolutionary high tide in China can be decided only by making a detailed examination to ascertain whether contradictions leading to a revolutionary high tide are really developing. Since contradictions are developing in the world between imperialist countries, between the imperialist countries and the colonies, and between the imperialists and the proletariat and the own countries, there is an intensified need for the imperialists' contend for the domination of China. While the imperialist contenti over China becomes more intense, both the contradiction between imperialism and the whole Chinese nation and the contradictio among the imperialists themselves develop simultaneously on Chinese soil, thereby creating the tangled warfare which is expanding and intensifying daily and giving rise to the continuous development. A single spark can start a prairie fire. 12. The contradictions among the different cliques of China's reactionary rulers. In the wake of the contradictions among the reactionary ruling cliques, the tangled warfare among the warlords, comes heavy taxation, which steadily sharpens the contradiction between the broad masses of taxpayers and the reactionary rulers. In the wake of contradiction between imperialism and China's national industry comes the failure of the Chinese industrialists to obtain concession from the imperialists, which sharpens the contradiction between Chinese bourgeoisie and the Chinese working class, with the Chinese capitalists trying to find a way out by frantically exploiting the worker and with the workers resisting. In the wake of imperialist commercial aggression, Chinese merchant capitalist extortions, heavier government taxation, etc., comes the deepening of the contradiction between the landlord class and the peasantry, that is, exploitation through rent and usury is aggravated and the hatred of the peasants for landlords grows. Because of the pressure of foreign goods, exhaustion of the purchasing power of the worker and peasant masses and the increase in government taxation, more and more dealers in Chinese-made goods and independent producers are being driven into bankruptcy. Because the reactionary government, though sheer of provisions and funds, endlessly expands its armies and through constantly extends the warfare, the masses of soldiers are in a constant state of privation. Because of the growth in government taxation, the rise in rent and interest demanded by the landlords and the daily spread of the disasters of war, there are famine and banditry everywhere and the peasant masses and the urban poor can hardly keep alive. Because the schools have no money, many students fear that their education may be interrupted. Because production is backward, many graduates have no hope of employment. Once we understand all these contradictions, we shall see in what a desperate situation, in what a chaotic state, China finds herself. We shall also see that the high tide of revolution against the imperialists, warlords and the landlords is inevitable, and will come very soon. All China is littered with dry faggots which will soon be aflame. The saying, a single spark can start a prairie fire, is an apt description of how the current situation will develop. We need only look at the strikes by the workers, the uprisings by the peasants, mutinies of soldiers and the strikes of students which are developing in many places to see that it cannot be long before a spark kindle a prairie fire. 122 MAOTSE tongue. The gist of the above was already contained in the letter from the Front Committee to the Central Committee on April 5, 1929. We reads in part, the Central Committee's letter, dated February 9, 192 makes too pessimistic an appraisal of the objective situation and our subjective forces. The Kuomintang's 3 suppressio campaigns against the Qingkang Mountains was the high-watt mark reached by the counter-revolutionary tide. But there it stopped, and since then the counter-revolutionary tide has gradually wrecked while the revolutionary tide has gradually risen. Although all parties' fighting capacity and organizational strength have been weakened to the extent described by the Central Committee, will be rapidly restored, and the passivity among comrades the party will quickly disappear as the counter-revolutionary tide gradually ebbs. The masses will certainly come over to us. Kuomintang's policy of massacre only serves to drive the fight into deep waters, 6 as the saying goes, and reformism no longer has any mass appeal. It is certain that the masses will soon share their illusions about the Kuomintang. In the emerging situation, no other party will be able to compete with the common party in winning over the masses. The political line and organizational line laid down by the party's 6th Nation Congress 7 are correct, that is, the revolution at the present stage democratic and not socialist, and the present task of the par. Here the words in the big cities should have been added to win over the masses and not to stage immediate insurrection. Nevertheless, the revolution will develop swiftly, and we should take a positive attitude in our propaganda and preparation for armed insurrections. In the present chaotic situation, we see lead the masses only by positive slogans and a positive attitude. Only by taking such an attitude can the party recover its fighting capacity. Proletarian leadership is the sole key to victory in the revolution. Building a proletarian foundation for the power and setting up party branches in industrial enterprises in districts are important organizational tasks for the party at present, but at the same time the major prerequisites for helping the struggle in the cities and hastening the rise of the revolutionary tide. Specifically the development of the struggle in the countryside, the establishment of red political power in small areas, a single spark can start a prairie fire. 12. The creation and expansion of the Red Army. Therefore, it would be wrong to abandon the struggle in the cities, but in our opinion it would also be wrong for any of our party members to fear growth of peasant strength lest it should outstrip the workers' strength and harm the revolution. For in the revolution in semi-colonial China, the peasant struggle must always fail if it do not have the leadership of the workers, but the revolution I never harmed if the peasant struggle outstrips the forces of the workers. The letter also contained the following reply on the question of the Red Army's operational tactics. To preserve the Red Army and arouse the masses, the Central Committee asks us to divide our forces into very small units and disperse them over the countryside and to withdraw Chutan and Mao Zedong from the army, so concealing the major targets. This is an unrealistic view. In the winter of 1927-28, we did plan to disperse our forces over the countryside, with each company or battalion operating on its own and adopting guerrilla tactic in order to arouse the masses while trying not to present a target for the enemy. We have tried this out many times, but have failed every time. The reasons are, 1. Most of the soldiers in the main force of the Red Army come from other areas and have a background different from that of the local Red Guards. 2. Division into small units results in weak leadership and inability to cope with adverse circumstances, which easily leads to defeat. 3. Units are liable to be crushed by the enemy one by one. 4. More adverse the circumstances, the greater the need for concentrating our forces and for the leaders to be resolute in struggle, because only thus can we have internal unity against the enemy. Only in favorable circumstances is it advisable to divide forces for guerrilla operations, and it is only then that the leader need not stay with the ranks all the time, as they must in adverse circumstances. The weakness of this passage is that the reasons adduced against the division of forces were of a negative character, which was far from adequate. The positive reason for concentrating our forces is that only concentration will enable us to wipe out comparatively large enemy units and occupy towns. Only after we have wiped out comparatively large enemy units and occupied towns can we arouse 124 MAOTSE tongue, masses on a broad scale and set up political power extending over a number of adjoining counties. Only thus can we make a widespread impact, what we call extending our political influence, contribute effectively to speeding the day of the revolutionary high tide. For instance, both the regime we set up in the Hunan-Qiang border area the year before last and the one we set up in West Fujian last year 9 were the product of this policy of concentrating our troops. This is a general principle. But are there not times WHR forces should be divided up? Yes, there are. The letter from T-Front Committee to the Central Committee says of guerrilla tactics for the Red Army, including the division of forces within a short radius, the tactics we have derived from the struggle of the past 3 years are indeed different from any other tactics, ANSI or modern, Chinese or foreign. With our tactics, the masses be aroused for struggle on an ever-broadening scale, and no name, however powerful, can cope with us. Ours are guerrilla tactic. They consist mainly of the following points: divide our forces to arouse the masses, concentrate our forces to deal with the enemy. The enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy camps, we harass. The enemy tires, we attack. The enemy retreats, we pursue to extend stable base areas. 10. Employ the policy of advance in waves. When pursued by a powerful enemy, employ the policy of circling around. Arouse the largest numbers of the masses in the short possible time and by the best possible methods. These tactics are just like casting a net. At any moment W should be able to cast it or draw it in. We cast it wide to win over the masses and draw it in to deal with the enemy. Such are T tactics we have used for the past 3 years. Here, to cast the net wide means to divide our forces with a short radius. For example, when we first captured the county of Yongsan in the Hunan-Kiangsi border area, we divided the fork of the 29th and 31st regiments within the boundaries of Yongsan County. Again, when we captured Yongsan for the third time, W once more divided our forces by dispatching the 28th Regiment the border of Anfu County, the 29th to Linhua, and the 31st to T border of Qian County. And, again, we divided our forces in T counties of southern Kiangsi last April and May, and in the county a single sparking started Prairie Fire 12, of western Fujian last July. As to dividing our forces over a wide radius, it is possible only on the two conditions that circumstance are comparatively favorable and the leading bodies fairly strong. For the purpose of dividing up our forces is to put us in a better position for winning over the masses, for deepening the agrarian revolution and establishing political power, and for expanding the Red Army and the local armed units. It is better not to divide our force when this purpose cannot be attained, or the division of our forces would lead to defeat and to the weakening of the Red Army, as happened in August 2 years ago when our forces were divided on the Hunan-Kiangsi border for an attack on Chenchu. But there is no doubt that, given the two above-mentioned conditions, we should divide our forces, because division is then more advantageous than concentration. The Central Committee's February letter was not in the right spirit and had a bad effect on a number of party comrades in Th 4th Army. At that time the Central Committee also issued circulars stating that war would not necessarily break out between Chiang Kai-shek and the Guangxi warlords. Since then, however, the appraisals and directives of the Central Committee have in Th main been correct. It has already issued another circular correcting the one containing the wrong appraisal. Although it has not made any correction of the letter to the Red Army, its subsequent directive have not been couched in the same pessimistic tone, and its views on the Red Army's operations now coincide with ours. Yet the bad effect which this letter had on some comrades persists. Therefore, I feel that it is still necessary to give some explanation. The plan to take Yangtze province within a year was also proposed last April by the Front Committee to the Central Committee, and decision to that effect was later made at U2. The following reason were given in the letter to the Central Committee: the armies of Chiang Kai-shek and the Guangxi warlords are approaching each other in the vicinity of Fujian, and a big battle is imminent. The resumption of mass struggle, coupled with the spread of contradictions among the ruling reactionaries, make it probable that there will soon be a high tide of revolution. As for how our work should be arranged under these circumstances, we feel that, so far as the southern provinces are concerned, armed forces of the compradors and landlords in Guangdong and Hunan provinces are too strong, and that in Hunan, more 126 MAOTSE tongue. Over, we have lost almost all our mass following, inside as outside the party, because of the party's purchased mistake in the three provinces of Fujian, Kiangsi and Zhejiang. However, the situation is different. First, militarily the enemy is weak there. In Zhejiang, there is only a small provincial force of Changpo-Chang 11 in Fujian, although there are 5 groups enemy troops totaling 14 regiments in all. Kuo Fengming's troops had already been smashed. The troops under Ch Kuo Hui and Lu Xingpang 12 are bandits of small fighting capacity. The 2 brigades of Marines stationed along the coast have never seen action, and their fighting capacity is undoubtedly and high. Changchen 13 alone can put up some sort of a fight, according to an analysis made by the Fujian Provincial Committee. Even he has only 2 relatively strong regiments. Addition, Fujian is now in a state of complete chaos, confusion and disunity. In Jiangxi, there are 16 regiments under T2 commands of Chu Pei Te-14 and Jiangxi Hui. 15 are stronger than the armed forces of either Fujian or Shikin, but far inferior to those of Hunan. Secondly, fewer push mistakes have been made in these 3 provinces. We are unclear about the situation in Zhejiang, but the party's organizational and mass base is somewhat better in Jiangxi and Fujian than in Hunan. Take Jiangxi for example. In northern Qiang we still have some bases in Tin, Saishui and Tunghu. Western Jiangxi the party and the Red Guard still have some strength in Minkang, Yongsan, Linhua and Sichuan. Southern Jiangxi the prospects are still brighter, as the 2nd to 4th regiments of the Red Army are steadily growing in strength in the counties of Qian, Yongfeng and Xinkuo. And what more, the Red Army under Fang Chi-min has by no means been wiped out. All this places us in a position to close in Nanchang. We hereby recommend to the Central Committee during the period of prolonged warfare among the Kuomintang warlords, we should contend with Chiang Kai-shek and Guangxi clique for Jiangxi province and also for Western Fujian and Western Zhejiang. In these 3 provinces we should enlarge the Red Army and create an independent regime in the masses, with a time limit of 1 year for accomplishing this plan. A single spark can start a Prairie Fire 12. This proposal to contend for Jiangxi aired only in citing a time limit of 1 year. It was based not only on conditions within Th province itself, but also on the prospect that a nationwide high tide of revolution would soon arise. For unless we had been convinced that there would soon be a high tide of revolution, we could no possibly have concluded that we could take Yangtze in a year. Th only weakness in the proposal was that it set a time limit of 1 year, which it should not have done, and so gave a flavor of impetuosity to the word soon in the statement, there will soon be high tide of revolution. As to the subjective and objective condition in Yangtze, they well deserve our attention. Besides the subjective conditions described in the letter to the Central Committee, 4 objective conditions can now be clearly pointed out. First, the economy of Yangtze is mainly feudal, the merchant capitalist class is relatively weak, and the armed forces of the landlords are weaker than in any other southern province. Secondly, Yangtze has no provincial troops of its own and has always been garrisoned by troops from other provinces sent there for the suppression of communists, or suppression of bandits. These troops are unfamiliar with local conditions, their interests are much less directly involved than if they were local troops, and they usually lack enthusiasm. And thirdly, unlike Kwantung, which is close to Hong Kong and under British control in almost every respect, Yangtze is comparatively remote from imperialist influence. Once we have grasped these 3 points, we can understand why rural uprisings are more widespread and the Red Army and guerrilla units more numerous in Yangtze than in any other province. How then should we interpret the word soon in the statement there will soon be a high tide of revolution? This is a common question among comrades. Marxists are not fortune tellers. They should and indeed can only indicate the general direction of future developments and changes. They should not and cannot fix the day and hour in a mechanistic way. But when I say that there will soon be high tide of revolution in China, I am emphatically not speaking of something which in the words of some people is possibly coming, something illusory, unattainable and devoid of significance for action. It is like a ship far out at sea, whose masthead can already be seen from the shore. It is like the morning sun in the east whose shimmering rays are visible from a high mountain top. It is like a child about to be born moving restlessly in its mother's womb. 128 Maotse Tung, notes, one comrade Fang Chi-min, a native of Yang, Jiangxi Province, and a member of the 6th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, was the founder of the Red Area in northeastern Jiangxi and of the 10th Red Army. In 1934 he the vanguard detachment of the Red Army in marching north to resist the Japan invaders. In January 1935 he was captured in battle against the counter-revolution Kuomintang troops, and in July he died a martyr's death in Nanchang. Pay attention to economic work, August. The growing intensity of the Revolutionary War makes it imperative for us to mobilize the masses in order to launch an immediate campaign on the economic front and undertake all possible and necessary task of economic construction. Why? Because all our present efforts should be directed towards gaining victory in the Revolutionary War, and first and foremost, towards gaining complete victory in the fight to smash the enemy's 5th encirclement and suppression campaign. They should be directed towards securing the material conditions which will guarantee food and other supplies for the Red Army, toward bettering the life of the people and so stimulating their more active participation in the Revolutionary War, towards organizing the mass on the economic front and educating them so as to provide fresh mass strength for the war, and towards consolidating the worker-peasant alliance and the democratic dictatorship of workers and peasants and strengthening proletarian leadership by building up the economy. Such economic construction is essential for the attainment of all these objectives. This must be clearly understood by everyone engaged in revolutionary work. Some comrades have thought it impossible to spare time for economic construction because the Revolutionary War keeps people busy enough, and they have condemned anyone arguing for it as right deviationist. In their opinion, economic construction is impossible in the midst of a revolutionary war and is possible only in peaceful, tranquil conditions prevailing after final victory. Comrades, such views are wrong. Whoever holds them fails to realize that with building up the economy it is impossible to secure the material prerequisites for the Revolutionary War, and the people will become exhausted in the course of a long war. Just consider. The enemy. This speech was delivered at the Economic Construction Conference of 70 counties in southern Jiangxi in August 1933. 129-130 Maotse Tung, enforcing an economic blockade, unscrupulous merchants and reactionaries are disrupting our finance and commerce, and the trade our red areas with the outside is seriously hampered. Will not the Revolutionary War be seriously affected unless these difficulties are overcome? Salt is very dear, and sometimes even unobtainable. Rye is cheap in the autumn and winter, but it becomes terribly dear spring and summer. All this directly affects the life of the workers and peasants and prevents any improvement. And does it not affect our basic line, the alliance of workers and peasants? If the workers and peasants become dissatisfied with their living conditions, will it then affect the expansion of our Red Army and the mobilization of the masses for the Revolutionary War? Therefore it is utterly wrong to think that no economic construction should be undertaken in the midst of the Revolutionary War. Those who think this way often say everything should be subordinated to the war effort, but they fail to understand that to dispense with economic construction would weaken the war effort rather than subordinate everything to it. Only by extending the work on the economic front and building the economy of red areas can we provide an adequate material basis for the revolutionary war, proceed smoothly with our military offensives and street effective blows at the enemy's encirclement and suppression campaigns. Only thus can we acquire the resources to enlarge the Red Army and push our front outwards to points thousands of li away, so when the circumstances prove favorable, the Red Army will be able to attack Nanchang and Fujiang free from all anxiety and, relieved of much of the task of provisioning itself, give its undivided attention to fighting. And only thus can we to a certain extent satisfy the material needs of the people so that they will join the Red Army or undertake other revolutionary tasks with even greater enthusiasm. Subordinating everything to the war effort means just this. Among those engaged in revolutionary work in various places, many do and yet understand the importance of economic construction in the Revolutionary War, and there are many local governments which give little attention to discussing the problems of economic construction. The economic departments of the local governments are not yet organized, and some are still without a director. In others, some incompetent has been assigned simply to fill the post. The formation cooperatives is still in the initial stage, and only in a few places the work of regulating food supplies been started. There has been no propaganda among the people for the work of economic construction. Pay attention to economic work 13, Chen, though such propaganda is very important, and mass enthusiasm for it has not been aroused. All this is due to the failure to recognize the importance of economic construction. Through the discussions of this conference and through the reports you will make when you return to your posts, we must create mass enthusiasm for economic construction among all government personnel and among all worker and peasants. The importance of economic construction for the Revolutionary War should be made clear to everyone, so that they will do their best to promote the sale of economic construction bonds, develop the cooperative movement, and set up public granaries and storehouses for famine relief everywhere. Each county must establish a sub-department for the regulation of food supplies, with branch offices in important districts and market centers. On the one hand, within our red areas we should send grain from places with a surplus to those with a deficit, so that it will not pile up in one place and become unobtainable in another, and its price will not be too low in one place and too high in another. On the other hand, we should send our grain surplus out of the red areas in a planned way, that is, not in unlimited quantities, and bring in necessities from the white areas, thus avoiding exploitation by unscrupulous merchants. We must do our best to develop agriculture and handicrafts and increase the output of farm implements and lime in order to ensure a bigger crop next year, and we must restore the output of such local products of wolfram, timber, camphor, paper, tobacco, linen, dried mushrooms and peppermint oil to former levels, and market them in the white area in quantity. Judged by volume, grain ranks first among the principal outgoing commodities in our trade with the outside areas. About 3 million pickles of unhusked rice are sent out yearly in exchange for necessary consumer goods, or an average of 1 pickle ahead of the 3 million population. It cannot, surely, be less than this. But who is handling this trade? It is handled entirely by the merchants who exploit you ruthlessly in the process. Last year they bought unhusked rice from the peasants in Wannan and Tahoe counties at 50 cents a pickle and sold it in Cantrell for 4 yuan, making a 7-fold profit. Take another instance. Every year our 3 million people need about 9 million yuan worth of salt and 6 million yuan worth of cotton cloth. Needless to say, this 15 million yuan trade in salt and cloth have been entirely in the hands of the merchants. We have done nothing about it. The exploitation by the merchants is really enormous. For 132 maotse tongue, instance, they go to Mycene and buy salt at 1 yuan for 7 kg and then sell it in our areas at 1 yuan for 12 ounces. Is this shocking profiteering? We can no longer ignore such a state of affairs, and from now on we must handle this trade ourselves. Our Department of Trade with outside areas must make a great effort in this connection. How shall we use the 3 million yuan from economic construction bonds? We plan to use it in the following way. 1 million WB allotted for the Red Army's war expenses, and 2 million WB loaned as capital to the cooperatives, the Bureau for the Regulation of Food Supplies and the Bureau of External Trade. Of the latter amount, the greater part will be used for expanding our external trade and the rest for expanding production. Our objective is not only to expand production but also to sell our products at fair price to the white areas and then purchase salt and cloth cheaply for distribution among our people, so as to break the enemy's block and check the merchants' exploitation. We must bring about the continued growth of the people's economy, greatly improve the livelihood of the masses and substantially increase our public revenue, thus lay firm material foundations for the Revolutionary War and for economic construction. This is a great task, a great class struggle. But we should ask ourselves, can it be accomplished in the midst of fierce fighting? I think it can. We are not talking about building a railway to Lungian or, for the time being, even about building a motor road to Cantrell. We are not saying that there should be a complete monopoly of the supply of grain, or that the government should handle all the salt and cloth trade, valued at 15 million yuan, to the total exclusion of tea merchants. This is not the point we are making or what we are trying to do. What we are talking about and trying to do is to develop agriculture and the handicrafts, and send out grain and wolfram exchange for salt and cloth, starting temporarily with a fund of TW million yuan plus the money invested by the people. Is there anything here that we should not undertake, or that we cannot undertake to achieve? We have already started this work and achieved some results. This year's autumn harvest is between 20 and 25% larger than last year's, or more than our original estimate of a 20% increase in the handicraft industries. The production of farm implements lime is being restored, and we are beginning to restore wolfram production. The output of tobacco, paper and timber is recovering. More has been accomplished this year in the regulation of food supplies. Pay attention to economic work 13. Start has been made on importing salt. It is on this achievement that we base our firm belief in the possibility of further progress. Is I not clearly wrong to say that economic construction is impossible now and has to wait until the war is over? It is thus clear that, at the present stage, economic construction must revolve around our central task, the Revolutionary War. Today the Revolutionary War is our central task, which economic construction should serve, center on and be subordinated to. It would likewise be wrong to regard economic construction as the center of all our present work to the neglect of the Revolutionary War, or to conduct it apart from the Revolutionary War. Not until the Civil War is over will it be possible and necessary to regard economic construction as the center of all our work. In the midst of a civil war, it is sheer delusion to try to carry out such peacetime economic construction as can and should be done in the future but not at present. The tasks for the present are those urgently demanded by the war. Every one of them should serve the war. None is a peacetime undertaking separate from the war. Any comrade entertains the idea of carrying out economic construction apart from the war, he should correct this mistake at once. It will be impossible to get a rapid campaign going on the economy front without a correct style of leadership and correct methods of work. This too presents an important problem which this conference must solve. For the comrades here will have a great deal to do as soon as they return, and will have to give guidance to the many people who will be working with them. In particular, the comrades who are working at the township and city levels and in the cooperatives, the food departments, the trade departments and the purchasing offices, are personally engaged in the practical work of mobilizing the people to organize cooperatives, regulating and transporting food supplies, and managing our trade with the outside areas. If their style of leadership is wrong and if they do not employ correct and efficient methods, TH work will be immediately affected, we shall fail to win mass support for the various tasks, and during the coming autumn and winter and next spring and summer we shall be unable to carry out the whole of the central government's plan for economic construction. For THES reasons I want to direct our comrades' attention to the following. Firstly, mobilize the masses by various organizational means. In the first place, comrades on the presidiums and in the economic and finance departments of the government bodies at all levels must regularly put on their agenda and discuss, supervise and check up on from Marx to Mao, not for commercial distribution, 134 MAOTSE tongue. Such items of work as the sale of bonds, the formation of cooperative, the regulation of food supplies and the promotion of production of trade. Next, the mass organizations, chiefly the trade unions and peasant leagues, must be moved into action. The trade unions should mobilize all their members to join these economic struggles. The peasant leagues are powerful basis for mobilizing the masses to be of cooperatives and subscribe to bonds, and they should be give vigorous leadership by district and township governments. Furthermore, we must conduct propaganda for economic construction village or household meetings, explaining clearly how it is related to the Revolutionary War and discussing in the most practical terms how to improve the livelihood of the masses and increase our strength of the struggle. We should appeal to the people to subscribe to bond, develop cooperatives, regulate food supplies, consolidate finances or promote trade. We should call upon them to fight for these slogans and should heighten their enthusiasm. Our objectives cannot attain unless we use various organizational means to mobilize the masses and conduct propaganda among them in the manner described, that is to say, unless the presidiums and the economic and finance departments of the government bodies at all levels actively attend discussing and checking up on the work of economic construction, unless they spur the mass organizations into action and hold propaganda meetings. Secondly, we must not be bureaucratic in our methods of mobilizing the masses. Bureaucratic leadership cannot be tolerated in economic construction any more than in any other branch of our revolution work. The ugly evil of bureaucracy, which no comrade likes, must thrown into the cesspit. The methods which all comrades should prefer are those that appeal to the masses, that is, those which are welcomed all workers and peasants. One manifestation of bureaucracy is slacky at work due to indifference or perfunctoriness. We must wage a struggle against this phenomenon. Commandism is another manifestation. To all appearances, persons given to commandism are not slack, they give the impression of being hard workers. But in fact cooperatives set up by commandist methods will not succeed, and even if appear to grow for a time, they cannot be consolidated. In the end masses will lose faith in them, which will hamper their development to push the sales of bonds in a commandist way and impose arbitrary quotas, regardless of whether people understand what the bonds are for and of how much they can afford, will ultimately arouse the people pay attention to economic work 13, displeasure and make it impossible to achieve good sales. We must reject commandism. What we need is energetic propaganda to convince the masses, and we should develop the cooperatives, promote the sales of bonds and do all the work of economic mobilization in accordance with the actual conditions and the real feelings of masses. Thirdly, large numbers of cadres are needed to extend the campaign of economic construction. This is not a matter of scores or hundreds of people, but of thousands and tens of thousands whom we must organize, train and send to the economic construction front. They will be the commanders and the broad masses, the soldiers on the economic front. People often sigh over the shortage of cadres. Comrades, is there really a shortage? Innumerable cadres have come to the fore from among the masses who have been steeled in agrarian struggles, the economic struggles and the Revolutionary War. How can we say there is a shortage of cadres? Discard this mistaken view and you will see cadres all around you. Fourthly, economic construction today is inseparable not only from the general task of the war but from other tasks as well. Only if there is a thorough checkup on land distribution too will it be possible to abolish feudal and semi-feudal ownership of land, completely enhance the peasants' enthusiasm for production and swiftly draw the peasant masses into economic construction. Only if the labor laws are resolutely enforced will it be possible to better the life of workers, bring them speedily into active participation in economic construction and strengthen their leadership of the peasants. Only there is correct leadership in the elections and in the exposure campaigns 3 which accompany the checkup on land distribution will it be possible to strengthen our government bodies so that they can give more vigorous leadership in the Revolutionary War and in all our work, including economic work. The raising of the political and cultural level of the people through cultural and educational work is also most important task in the development of the economy. The expansion of the Red Army must not be neglected for a single day goes without saying. Everybody understands that without Red Army victories the economic blockade would be still tighter. On the other hand, economic growth and a better life for the masses will undoubtedly be of great help to the work of expanding the Red Army and inspiring the masses to march eagerly to the front. To sum up, we achieve all the above tasks, including the very important new 136 MAOTSE tongue, of economic construction, and if we make them all serve the Revolutionary War, then victory in the Revolutionary War will undoubtedly be ours. Notes: 1. Between 1930 and 1934 Chiang Kai-shek launched 5 large-scale onslaughts against the Red areas centered on Juacan, Kiangsi, They were called encirclement and suppression campaigns. The fifth of such campaigns began in October 19, though Chiang Kai-shek had been making active preparations for it since the Sum 2A campaign to check up land distribution was carried out in the Red Army after the agrarian reform to ascertain whether the land had been properly redistributed. 3 exposure campaigns were democratic campaigns in which the people were encouraged to expose misdeeds by the functionaries of the democratic government. How to differentiate the classes in the rural areas. October. I. The landlord. A landlord is a person who owns land, does not engage in labor himself, or does so only to a very small extent, and lives by exploiting the peasants. The collection of land rent is his main form of exploitation. In addition, he may lend money, hire labor, or engage in industry or commerce. But his exaction of land rent from the peasants is high principal form of exploitation. The administration of communal land and the collection of rent from school land one are included in the category of exploitation through land rent. A bankrupt landlord shall still be classified as a landlord if H does not engage in labor but lives by swindling or robbing others or by receiving assistance from relatives or friends, and is better off than the average middle peasant. Warlords, officials, local tyrants and evil gentry are political representatives and exceptionally ruthless members of the landlord class. Minor local tyrants and evil gentry are also very often to be found among the rich peasants. Persons who assist landlords in collecting rent and managing property, who depend on landlord exploitation of the peasants as the main source of income and are better off than the average middle peasant shall be put in the same category as landlords. Landlords. Comrade Mao Zedong wrote this document in October 1933 to rectify deviations that had occurred in the work of land reform and to provide a correct solution for the land problem. It was adopted by the Workers' and Peasants' Democratic Central Government of the time as establishing the criteria for determining class status in the rural areas. 137-138 Mao Zedong. Usurers are persons who rely on exploitation by usury as the main source of income, are better off than the average middle peasant and shall be put in the same category as landlords. 2. The rich peasant. The rich peasant, as a rule, owns land. But some rich peasants owe only part of their land and rent the remainder. Others have no law of their own at all and rent all their land. The rich peasant general has rather more and better instruments of production and more like capital than the average and engages in labor himself, but elder relies on exploitation for part or even the major part of his income. His main form of exploitation is the hiring of labor. Long-term laborers. In addition, he may let part of his land and practice exploitation through land rent, or may lend money or engage in industry and commerce. Most rich peasants also engage in the administration of communal land. A person who owns a fair amount of good land farms some of it himself without hiring labor, but exploits off peasants by means of land rent, loan interest or in other ways, shall also be treated as a rich peasant. Rich peasants regularly practice exploitation and many derive most of their income from this sort. 3. The middle peasant. Many middle peasants own land. Some own only part of their land and rent the rest. Others own no land of their own at all and rent their land. All of them have a fair number of farm implements. Middle peasant derives his income wholly or mainly from his own labor. As a rule he does not exploit others and in many cases himself is exploited by others, having to pay a small amount in law rent and in interest on loans. But generally he does not sell his labor power. Some middle peasants, the well-to-do middle peasants, practice exploitation to a small extent, but this is not their main source of income. How to differentiate classes in rural areas. 13. 4. The poor peasant. Among the poor peasants some own part of their land and have a few odd farm implements, others own no land at all but only a few odd farm implements. As a rule poor peasants have to rent the land they work on and are subjected to exploitation, having to pay land rent and interest on loans and to hire themselves out to some extent. In general, a middle peasant does not need to sell his labor power while the poor peasant has to sell part of his labor power. This is the principal criterion for distinguishing between a middle and poor peasant. V. The worker, including the farm laborer, as a rule owns no land or farm implements, though some do own a very small amount of land and very few farm implements. Workers make their living wholly or mainly by selling their labor power. Notes. 1. There were various forms of public land in China's rural areas, land owned by the township or district government, by the ancestral temple of a clan, by Buddhist or Taoist temple, a Catholic church or a mosque, or land whose income was used for public welfare purposes such as famine relief, or the building and maintenance of bridges and roads, or for educational purposes. In practice, most of such land was controlled by the landlords and rich peasants, and few peasants had any say in its administration. Our economic policy, January at $. Only the Kuomintang warlords who have brought the areas under their own rule to the brink of bankruptcy have the utter shamelessness to spread the rumor, day in day out, that the red areas are in a state of total collapse. The imperialists and the Kuomintang are bent on wrecking the red areas, the work of economic construction now in progress there, and the welfare of the millions of workers and peasants who have achieved liberation. For this purpose, they have pursued a ruthless policy of economic blockade, in addition to organizing force for military campaigns of encirclement and suppression. But, leading the broad masses and the Red Army, we have not only smashed on enemy encirclement and suppression campaign after another, we have also been doing all the essential work of economic construction within our power in order to defeat this vicious economic blockade. In this respect too, we have scored one success after another. The principle governing our economic policy is to proceed with all the essential work of economic construction within our power and concentrate our economic resources on the war effort, and at the same time to improve the life of the people as much as possible, consolidate the worker-peasant alliance in the economic field, ensure proletarian leadership of the peasantry, and strive to secure leadership by the state sector of the economy over the private sector, thus creating prerequisites for our future advance to socialism. The focus of our economic construction is to increase agricultural and industrial production, expand our trade with the outside, and develop the cooperatives. Agriculture in the red areas is obviously making progress. Compared with 1932, the 1933 agricultural output was 15% high. This report was given by Comrade Mao Zedong at the Second National Congress of Workers and Peasants Representatives held in Juikan, Jiangxi Province in January 1934. 141-142 MAOTSE Tung, in southern Jiangxi and western Fujian, and 20% higher in Fujian-Zhejiang Jiangxi border area. The Sichuan-Shenxi border area has had a good harvest. After a red area is established, farm output often declines in the first year or two, but it picks up again. The peasant masses work with greater enthusiasm after the land redistributed and ownership is settled, and after we have given encouragement to production. Today in some places farm output has reached and even exceeded the pre-revolution level. In others, and only has land that lay waste during the revolutionary uprisings be reclaimed, but new land has been brought under cultivation. In more places mutual aid groups and plowing teams too have been organized to adjust the use of labor power in the villages, and cooperative have been organized to overcome the shortage of draft oxen. Moreover, the women are taking part in production in great numbers. None of this could have happened in the Kuomintang days. With the law in the hands of the landlords, the peasants then were neither willing to improve it nor did they possess the means to do so. Only since W have distributed the land to the peasants and encouraged and reward production has their labor enthusiasm blossomed forth and great success in production been achieved. It should be pointed out that the present conditions agriculture occupies first place in our economic construction. It is by agriculture that we solve both the most important problem of food, and the problem of raw materials such as koto hemp, sugarcane and bamboo, which are needed for the making clothes, sugar, paper and other necessities. The care of forests and the increase of livestock are also an important part of agriculture. Within the framework of small-scale peasant economy, it is permissible and indeed necessary to draw up suitable plans for the OUTP of certain important agricultural products and to mobilize the peasant to strive for their fulfillment. We should pay closer attention and devote greater efforts to this. We must actively lead the peasants solving such difficult and essential problems in production as labo power, draft oxen, fertilizer, seed and irrigation. In this condition our fundamental task is to adjust the use of labor power in organized way and to encourage women to do farm work. The necessary measures to solve the problem of labor power are organizing mutual aid groups and plowing teams and mobilizing and encouraging the whole rural population to help during the busy spring and summer plowing seasons. Another big problem is that quite a large proportion, about 25%, of the peasants are short of draw go economic policy 14, oxen. We must attend to organizing draft oxen cooperatives, encouraging the peasants without oxen to buy them for their common use through voluntary subscription to shares. Irrigation, which is the lifeblood of agriculture, also merits close attention. Of course, W cannot as yet bring up the question of state or collective farming, but it is urgently necessary to set up small experimental farms, agricultural research schools and exhibitions of farm produce in various places to stimulate the development of agriculture. The enemy blockade has made it difficult for us to market good outside our areas. There has been a decline in production in many handicraft industries in the red areas, notably tobacco curing and paper making. But the difficulties of sending goods out are no entirely insurmountable. We have an extensive market of our own because of the mass demand in our areas. We should systematically restore and develop handicrafts and also certain industries, firstly to supply our own needs and secondly for trade with the outside. In last 2 years, and especially since the first half of 1933, many handicrafts and a few industries have begun to look up because of attention we have begun to devote to them and the gradual development of producers' cooperatives by the people. The most significant fields are tobacco, paper, wolfram, camphor, farm implements and fertilizers, such as lime. Moreover, in our present circumstances W should not neglect the manufacture of our own cotton cloth, medicine and sugar. In the Fujian-Zhejiang Jiangxi border area, some industries have been set up which were previously non-existent, such as paper making, cloth making and sugar refining, and they are doing well. To relieve the shortage of salt, people have begun to extract from niter. It requires proper planning to keep industry going. With a scattered handicraft industry, detailed and comprehensive planning is of course impossible. But fairly detailed production plans are absolutely essential for certain important enterprises, and first and foremost for state and cooperative enterprises. Every one of our state and cooperative industrial enterprises must pay attention from very beginning to making accurate estimates of raw material output and marketing prospects in both the enemy areas and our own. At the present time, it is particularly necessary for us to organize private external trading according to plan and for the state to handle certain essential commodities directly, for instance, the import of sail and cotton cloth, the export of grain and wolfram, and the adjustment of grain supply within our own areas. Such work was first undertaken 144 MAOTSE Tung, in the Fujian-Zhejiang Jiangxi border area and was started in Central area in the spring of 1933. With the establishment of Bureau of External Trade and other agencies, initial successes have been achieved in this connection. Our economy is made up of 3 sectors, state enterprise, cooperative enterprise and private enterprise. At present, state enterprise is limited to what is possible and essential. State-operated industry and commerce have begun to grow and they have boundless prospects. As regards the private sector of the economy, we shall not hamper it, indeed we shall promote and encourage it, so long as it doesn't transgress the legal limits set by our government. For the development of private enterprise is essential to the interests of the state and people at the present stage. Needless to say, private enterprise is no preponderant and will inevitably continue to occupy a dominant position for a considerable time. Today, private undertakings in the R areas are small in scale. Cooperative enterprise is growing rapidly. There are Altajith 1,423 cooperatives of various kinds, with a total capital of over 300,000 yuan, according to the September 1933 figures for 17 county in Jiangxi and Fujian. Consumers cooperatives and grain cooperatives head the list, with producers cooperatives coming next. Cred cooperatives have just started functioning. When the cooperative of the state enterprises become coordinated and grow over a long period of time, they will become a tremendous force in our economy. They will gradually prevail and assume leadership over the private sector. Therefore, the greatest possible development of state enterprise of the extensive development of cooperative enterprise must go hand in hand with encouraging the development of private enterprise. With the support of the masses, we have issued economic construction bonds to the value of 3 million yuan in order to develop stock enterprise and assist the cooperatives. Such reliance on the strength of the masses is the only possible way to solve the problem of fund for economic construction at this time. To increase our revenue by developing the economy is a basic principle of our financial policy. It has already brought tangible results in the Fujian-Zhejiang border area and is beginning to sow in the central area too. It is the duty of our financial and economic organizations to apply this principle conscientiously. In this connection, we should make quite sure that the issuing of notes by the STOUR Economic Policy 14 Bank is based primarily on the needs of economic development, and only secondarily on purely fiscal needs. Thrift should be the guiding principle in our government expenditure. It should be made clear to all government workers that corruption and waste are very great crimes. Our campaigns against corruption and waste had already achieved some results, but further efforts are required. Our system of accounting must be guided by the principle of saving every copper for the war effort, for the revolutionary cause and for our economic construction. Our methods of spending state revenue must be strictly different from those of the Kuomintang. At a time when the country is plunged in economic disaster, when hundreds of millions of people are suffering the terrible hardships of hunger and cold, the people's government in our areas is staunchly pressing ahead with economic construction for the sake of the revolutionary war and in the interests of the nation, regardless of all difficulties. The situation is perfectly clear. Only by defeating imperialism and the Kuomintang and by undertaking planned, organized economic construction can we deliver the people of the whole of Qin from unprecedented disaster. Notes. 1. There was usually a decline in farm output in the first year or two after establishment of a red area, chiefly because land ownership was not yet settled and the new economic order was not fully established during land redistribution, that the peasants could not yet set their minds fully on production. 2. Mutual aid groups and plowing teams, based on individual farming, were formed by peasants in the red areas to facilitate production through a better organization of labor power. On the principle of voluntary participation and mutual benefit, the members did an equal amount of work for each other, or if one could not give another as much help as he received, he made up the difference in cash. Apart from helping each other, the teams gave preferential treatment to families of Red Army soldiers and worked for bereaved old folk without any pay except for meals during the work. As these measures of mutual aid were a great help to production and were carried out on a reasonable basis, they won the warm support of the masses. Be concerned with the well-being of the masses. Pay attention to methods of work. January and $. There are two questions which comrades have failed to stress during the discussion and which, I feel, should be dealt with. The first concerns the well-being of the masses. Our central task at present is to mobilize the broad masses to take part in the revolutionary war, overthrow imperialism and the Kuomintang by means of such war, spread the revolution throughout country, and drive imperialism out of China. Anyone who does not attach enough importance to this central task is not a good revolutionary cadre. If our comrades really comprehend this task and understand that the revolution must at all costs be spread throughout country, then they should in no way neglect or underestimate question of the immediate interests, the well-being, of the broad masses. For the revolutionary war is a war of the masses. It can be waged only by mobilizing the masses and relying on them. If we only mobilize the people to carry on the war and do nothing else, can we succeed in defeating the enemy? Of course not. If we want to win, we must do a great deal more. We must lead peasants struggle for land and distribute the land to them, heighten their labor enthusiasm and increase agricultural production, safeguard the interests of the workers, establish cooperatives, develop trade with outside areas, and solve the problems facing the masses: food, shelter and clothing, fuel, rice, cooking oil and salt, sickness and hygiene, and marriage. In short, all the practical problems in This was part of the concluding speech made by Comrade Mao Zedong at the Second National Congress of Workers and Peasants Representatives held at Juakan, Jiangxi Province in January, 1934. 147-148 Mao Tung, masses' everyday life should claim our attention. If we attend to the problems, solve them and satisfy the needs of the masses, we shall really become organizers of the well-being of the masses, and will truly rally round us and give us their warm support. Comrade, will we then be able to arouse them to take part in the revolutionary war? Yes, indeed we will. Here is the kind of thing we have found among some of our cadre. They talk only about expanding the Red Army, enlarging the Transpo Corps, collecting the land tax and selling bonds. As for other met, they neither discuss nor attend to them, and even ignore them altogether. For instance, there was a time when the Qinghai municipal government concerned itself only with the expansion of the army and with mobilization for the transport corps and paid not the slightest attention to the well-being of the masses. The problems facing the people of Qinghai City were that they had no firewood, no s was on sale because the capitalists were hoarding it, some people no houses to live in, and rice was both scarce and dear. These were practical problems for the masses of the people of Qinghai and eagerly looked to us for help in solving them. But the Qinghai municipal government did not discuss any of these matters. That's why when the new Workers and Peasants Representative Council elected in the city, 100 or more representatives were unwilling to attend after the first few council meetings had discussed only the expansion of the Red Army and mobilization for the Transport Corporation, entirely ignoring the well-being of the masses, so that the council unable to go on meeting. The result was that very little was achieved in regard to the expansion of the Red Army and mobilization for T Transport Corps. That was one kind of situation. Comrades, you have probably read the pamphlets given you about 2 model townships. There the situation is entirely different. A great number of people have joined the Red Army from Chanka Township in Gyeongsi 1 and Saesi Township in Fukien. 2 in Chankang 80% of the young men and women have joined the R Army, and in Saesi the figure is 88%. There has been a sale of bonds too, and 4,500 yuan worth have been sold in Chanka, which has a population of 1,500. Much has also been done in outfields. What accounts for this? A few examples will make the point clear. In Chankang, when fire broke out in a poor peasants who destroying 1.5 rooms, the township government appealed be concerned with well-being of the masses 14, to the masses to contribute money to help him. In another instance 3 persons were starving, so the township government and Mutual Aid Society immediately gave them rice. During the food shortage last summer, the township government obtained rice from Kundlu County, 3 more than 200 li away, for the rally of the masses. Excellent work was done along these lines in Saes as well. Such township governments are really models. They are absolutely different from the Tingchao municipal government with its bureaucratic methods of leadership. We should learn from Chankang and Saesi townships and oppose bureaucratic leaders like those in Tingchao City. I earnestly suggest to this Congress that we pay close attention to the well-being of the masses, from the problems of land and labu to those of fuel, rice, cooking oil and salt. The women want to learn plowing and harrowing. Whom can we get to teach them? Children want to go to school. Have we set up primary schools? Wooden bridge over there is too narrow and people may fall off. Should we not repair it? Many people suffer from boils and old ailments. What are we going to do about it? All such problems concerning the well-being of the masses should be placed on our agenda. We should discuss them, adopt and carry out decisions and check up on the results. We should convince the masses that we represent their interests, that our lives are intimately bound up with theirs. We should help them to proceed from these things to an understanding of higher tasks which we have put forward, the tasks of the Revolutionary War, so that they will support the revolution and spread it through the country, respond to our political appeals and fight to the end. Full victory in the revolution. The masses in Chankang say, the Communist Party is really good. It has thought of everything on new behalf. The comrades in Chankang Township are an example to all of us. What admirable people. They have won the genuine affection of the broad masses, who support their call for war mobilization. Do we want to win the support of the masses? Do we want them to devote their strength to the front? If so, we must be with them, heirs their enthusiasm and initiative, be concerned with their well-being, work earnestly and sincerely in their interests and solve all 5 problems of production and everyday life, the problems of salt, rice, housing, clothing, childbirth, etc. If we do so, the masses will surely support us and regard the revolution as their most glorious banner 150 MAOTSE tongue, as their very life. In the event of a Kuomintang attack on the R areas they will fight the Kuomintang to the death. There can be doubt about this, for is it not a plain fact that we have smashed T enemies' 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th encirclement and suppressio campaigns? The Kuomintang is now pursuing a policy of blockhouse warfare, feverishly constructing their tortoise shells as though they were air bastions. Comrades. Are they really iron bastions? Not in the least. Think of the palaces of the feudal emperors over thousands of years. Were they not powerful with their walls and moats? Yet they crumble one after another the moment the masses arose. The Tsar of Rus was one of the world's most ferocious rulers, yet when the proletariat and the peasantry rose in revolution, was there anything left of him? No, nothing. His bastions of iron? They all crumbled. Comrade, what is a true bastion of iron? It is the masses, the millions of people who genuinely and sincerely support the revolution. That is the real iron bastion which no force can smash, no for whatsoever. The counter-revolution cannot smash us. On the contrary, we shall smash it. Rallying millions upon millions of people with the revolutionary government and expanding our revolutionary we shall wipe out all counter-revolution and take over the whole of China. The second question concerns our methods of work. We are the leaders and organizers of the Revolutionary War as the leaders and organizers of the life of the masses. To organize the Revolutionary War and to improve the life of the masses are 2 major tasks. In this respect, we are faced with a serious problem of methods of work. It is not enough to set tasks, we must also solve the problem of the methods for carrying them out. If our task is cross a river, we cannot cross it without a bridge or a boat. Until the bridge or boat problem is solved, it is idle to speak of crossing the river. Unless the problem of method is solved, talk about task is useless. Unless we pay attention to giving leadership to work of expanding the Red Army and devote particular care to methods, we will never succeed even though we recite the expand the Red Army 1,000 times. Nor can we accomplish our tasks in any other field, for instance, in checking up on lead distribution, or in economic construction, or culture and education, our work in the new areas and the outlying districts, if all we do be concerned with well-being of the masses. 15. To set the tasks without attending to the methods of carrying them out, without combating bureaucratic methods of work and adopting practical and concrete ones, and without discarding commandist methods and adopting the method of patient persuasion. The comrades in Singhuo have done first-rate work and deserve our praise as model workers. Similarly, the comrades in northeastern Gyeongsi have done good work and are also model workers. By linking the problem of the well-being of the masses with that of the Revolutionary War, the comrades in both these places are simultaneously solving the problems of revolutionary methods of work and of accomplishing their revolutionary tasks. They are working conscientiously, solving problems with minute care and shouldering their revolutionary responsibilities in earnest. They are good organizers and leaders both of revolutionary war and of the well-being of the masses elsewhere too. The comrades have made progress in their work and deserve our praise, as in some parts of the counties of Shanghang, Chengting and Yongting in Fujian province. In Xiang and other places in southern Jiangxi province. In some parts of the counties Ochailing, Yongsan and Qian in the Hunan-Jiangxi border area. In some parts of Yangsan County in the Hunan-Hubei-Jiangxi border area. In districts and townships of many other counties in Jiangxi province and in the county of Zhujiang which is directly under central government. In all the places under our leadership, there are undoubtedly many active cadres, excellent comrades, who have sprung from masses. These comrades have a responsibility to help in places where our work is weak and to help comrades who are not yet able to work well. We are in the midst of a great revolutionary war. We must break through the enemy's large-scale encirclement and suppression and spread the revolution to all parts of the country. All revolutionary cadres have a tremendous responsibility. After this Congress we must adopt effective measures to improve our work. The advanced area should become even more advanced, and the backward areas should catch up with the advanced. We must create thousands of townships like Chengkang and scores of counties like Xinhuo. They will be our strongholds. From these strongholds we shall go forth to smash the enemy's encirclement and suppression campaigns and overthrow the rule of imperialism and the Kuomintang throughout the country. 152 Maotse Tung. Notes. 1. Chengkang Township is in Xinhuo County, Jiangxi Province. 2. Tsaisi Township is in Shanghang County, Fujian Province. 3. Kundu County was then in the red area in Jiangxi, with the town Tungtu lying southeast of Qian County as its center. It was named after Commander Huang Kongwei, commander of the 3rd Army Corps of the Red Army, laid down his life there in October 1931. 4. The building of blockhouses round the red areas was decided upon by Chiang Kai-shek at his military conference held at Lushan, Jiangxi Province in July 19 as a new military tactic for his 5th encirclement and suppression campaign. The end of January 1934 an estimated total of 2,900 blockhouses had been built Jiangxi Province. The Japanese aggressors later adopted the same tactic against 8th Route and the new 4th Armies. Experience fully proved that the counter-revolutionary tactic of using blockhouses could be completely foiled and defeated by adhering to Comrade Mao Zedong's strategy of People's War, on tactics against Japanese imperialism, December at end. Present the characteristics of the present, political situation, comrades. A great change has now taken place in the political situation. Our party has defined its tasks in the light of this changed situation. What is the present situation? Its main characteristic is that Japanese imperialism wants to turn China into a colony. As we all know, for nearly 100 years China has been a semi-colonial country jointly dominated by several imperialist powers. Owing to the Chinese people's struggle against imperialism and to conflicts among the imperialist powers, China has been able to retain a semi-independent status. For a time World War I gave Japan's imperialism the opportunity of dominating China exclusively. But treaty surrendering China to Japan, the 21 demands one signed by Yuan Shikai, to the arch-traitor of that time, was inevitably rendered null and void as a result of the Chinese people's fight against Japanese imperialism and of the intervention by other imperialist powers. In 1922 at the Washington Nine-Power Conference called by the United States, a Treaty 3 was signed which once again placed Chin. This report was given by Comrade Mao Zedong at the Conference of Party Activists which 154 Maotse Tung, under the joint domination of several imperialist powers. But before long the situation changed again. The incident of September 18, 1993 began the present stage of Japan's colonization of China. As Japan aggression was temporarily limited to the 4 northeastern provinces, some people felt that the Japanese imperialists would probably add them no farther. Today things are different. The Japanese imperialists have already shown their intention of penetrating south of the Great W and occupying all China. Now they want to convert the whole China from a semi-colony shared by several imperialist powers into colony monopolized by Japan. The recent Eastern Hopei incident and diplomatic talks 7 are clear indications of this trend of even which threatens the survival of the whole Chinese people. This fact all classes and political groups in China with the question of what to resist, surrender, or vacillate between the two. Now let us see how the different classes in China answer question. The workers and the peasants are all demanding resistance. Revolution of 1924-27, the Agrarian Revolution from 1927 to the present day, and the anti-Japanese tide since the incident of September 1, 1931, have all proved that the working class and peasantry are the more resolute forces in the Chinese Revolution. The petty bourgeoisie is also demanding resistance. Have not student youth and the urban petty bourgeoisie already started the pro-anti-Japanese movement? 8. This section of the Chinese petty bourgeoisie took part in the Revolution of 1924-27. Like the peasants, are small producers in their economic status, and their interests are irreconcilable with those of imperialism. Imperialism and the China counter-revolutionary forces have done them great harm, driving into unemployment, bankruptcy or semi-bankruptcy. Now, faced with the immediate danger of becoming slaves to a foreign nation, have no alternative but to resist. On tactics against Japanese imperialism 15, but how do the national bourgeoisie, the comprador and landlord classes, and the Kuomintang face up to this question? The big local tyrants and evil gentry, the big warlords and the big bureaucrats and compradors have long made up their minds. They maintain, as they have done all along, that revolution of whatever kind is worse than imperialism. They have formed a camp of traitors for whom the question of whether to become slaves of a foreign nation simply does not exist because they had already lost all sense of nationality and their interests are inseparably linked with imperialism. Their chieftain is Chiang Kai-shek. 9. This camp of traitors are deadly enemies of the Chinese people. Japanese imperialism could not have become so blatant in its aggression were it not for this pack of traitors. They are the running dogs of imperialism. The national bourgeoisie presents a complicated problem. The class took part in the revolution of 1924-27, but terrified by the flame of revolution, it later deserted to the enemy of the people, the Chiang Kai-shek clique. The question is whether there is any possibility that this class will undergo a change in the present circumstances. Do you think there is? For the national bourgeoisie is not the same as either landlord or the comprador class. There is a difference between them. The national bourgeoisie is less feudal than the landlord class and not so comprador as the comprador class. The section having more ties with foreign capital and the Chinese landed interests form the right wing of the national bourgeoisie. And we shall not, for th moment, consider whether it can change or not. The problem lies with those sections which have few or no such ties. We believe that in the new situation in which China is threatened with being reduced to a colony, these sections may change their attitude. The change will be marked by vacillation. On the one hand they dislike imperialism and on the other they fear thorough revolution, and they vacillate between the two. This explains why they took part in the revolution intrigues and many armed attack. 156 MAOTSE Tung, of 1924-27 and why, in the end, they went over to Chiang Kai-shek's side. In what respect does the present period differ from 1927 WH Chiang Kai-shek betrayed the revolution? China was then still semi-colony, but now she is on the way to becoming a colony. Over the past 9 years the national bourgeoisie has deserted its ally, the working class, and made friends with the landlord and comrade classes, but has it gained anything? Nothing, except the bankrupt or semi-bankruptcy of its industrial and commercial enterprises. And we believe that in the present situation the attitude of the nation bourgeoisie can change. What will be the extent of the change? The general characteristic of the national bourgeoisie is to vacillate. Be at a certain stage of the struggle, one section, the left wing, may join, while another section may vacillate towards neutrality. Whose class interests does the 19th Root Army led by T.S. Ting Kai-ten and others represent? Those of the national bourgeois, the upper petty bourgeoisie, and the rich peasants and small landlord in the countryside. Did not Tsai Ting-kai and his associates fight bitterly against the Red Army? Yes, but they subsequently concluded an anti-Japanese and anti-Chiang alliance with the Red Army. In Kiangsi they had attacked the Red Army, but later in Chiang they fought the Japanese imperialists. Later still, in Fuking they came to terms with the Red Army and turned their guns against Chiang Kai-shek. Whatever course Tsai Ting-kai and his associates may ta in the future, and despite their Fuking people's government's adherence to old practice and failing to arouse the people to struggle, must be considered beneficial to the revolution that they turned the guns, originally trained on the Red Army, against Japanese imperialism and Chiang Kai-shek. It marked a split within the Kuomintang camp. If the circumstances following the September 18th incite could cause this group to split away, why cannot the present circumstances give rise to other splits in the Kuomintang? Those PAR members who hold that the whole landlord and bourgeois camp united and permanent and will not change under any circumstance are wrong. They not only fail to appreciate the present grave situation, they have even forgotten history. Let me speak a little more about the past. In 1926 and 1927, during the time when the Revolutionary Army advanced on Wuhan, captured it and marched into Honan, Tang Shengqi and Feng Yuxiang took part in the revolution. In 1933, Feng Yuxiang cooperated for and tactics against Japanese imperialism 15, time with the Communist Party in forming the anti-Japanese Allied Army in Shattur Province. Take another striking example. Did not the 26th Root Army which, together with the 19th Root Army, had attacked the Red Army in Kiangsi, stage the Ningtu Uprising 12 in December 1931 and become part of the Red Army? The leaders of the Ningtu Uprising Chao Po-sheng, Tong Chantang and others, have become steadfast comrades in the revolution. The anti-Japanese operations of Ma Chanshan 13 in the northeastern provinces represented another split in the ruling class camp. All these instances indicate that splits will occur in the enemy camp when all China comes within the range of Japanese bombs, and when the struggle changes its normal pace and suddenly surges forward. Now, comrades, let us turn to another aspect of the question. Is it correct to object to our view on the ground that China's national bourgeoisie is politically and economically flabby, and to argue that it cannot possibly change its attitude in spite of the new circumstances? I think not. If weakness is the reason for its inability to change its attitude, why did the national bourgeoisie behave differently in 1924-27 when it did not merely vacillate towards the revolution but actually joined it? Can one say that the weakness of the national bourgeoisie is a new disease, and not one that accompanies it from the very womb? Can one say that the national bourgeoisie is weak today, but was not weak in 1924-27? One of the chief political and economic characteristics of a semi-colonial country is the weakness of its national bourgeoisie. That is exactly why the imperialists dare to bully them, and it follows that one of their characteristics is dislike of imperialism. Of course, so far from denying it, we fully recognize that it is the very weakness of the national bourgeoisie that may make it easy for the imperialists, landlords and compradors to entice them with the bait of some temporary advantage. Hence their lack of revolutionary thoroughness. Nevertheless, it cannot be said that in present circumstances there is no difference between the national bourgeoisie and the landlord and comprador classes. Therefore, we emphatically assert that when the national crisis reaches a crucial point, splits will occur in the Kuomintang camp. Such splits have revealed themselves in the vacillation of the national bourgeoisie and the emergence of such anti-Japanese figures as Feng 158 Maotse Tung, Yuxiang, Tsai Ting-kai and Ma Chanshan, who have become popu for a time. Basically, these splits are unfavorable to the counter-revolution and favorable to the revolution. Their possibility increased by China's uneven political and economic development, by the consequent uneven development of the revolution. Comrades, so much for the positive side of the question. Now me take up the negative side, namely, the fact that certain elements among the national bourgeoisie are often past masters at deceiving the people. Why? Because apart from the genuine supporters of Tea People's revolutionary cause, this class includes many who temper appear as revolutionaries or semi-revolutionaries, and who thus act a deceptive status which makes it difficult for the people to see through their lack of revolutionary thoroughness and their false trappingness. Increases the responsibility devolving on the Communist Party to criticize its allies, unmask the fake revolutionaries, and gain Tea leadership. To deny the possibility that the national bourgeoisie vacillate and join the revolution during great upheavals amounts abandoning, or at any rate to minimizing, our party's task of contending for leadership. For if the national bourgeoisie were exact the same as the landlords and compradors and had the same vile traitorous visage, there would be little or no problem of contending with it for leadership. In making a general analysis of the attitude of the Chinese landlord class and the bourgeoisie in times of great upheaval, we should all point to another aspect, namely, that even the landlord and comrade camp is not completely united. The reason is that China is a semi-colonial country for which many imperialist powers are contended when the struggle is directed against Japanese imperialism. Then tea-rotting dogs of the United States or Britain, obeying the varley tones of their masters' commands, may engage in veiled or even strife with the Japanese imperialists and their rotting dogs. There have been many instances of such dogfights and we shall not dwell on them. We will only mention the fact that Hu Hanmin, 14 a Kuomintang politician once detained by Chiang Kai-shek, has recently added his signature to the 6-point program for resisting Jap and saving the nation 15 which we have advanced. The warlord of the Kwantung and Guangxi clique 16 who back Hu Hanmin are also opposing Chiang Kai-shek, under the deceitful slogans recover our lost territory, and resist Japan and at the same time suppress the bandits 17, as against Chiang Kai-shek's slogan of Fio and tactics. Against Japanese imperialism 15, suppress the bandits, then resist Japan. Is this not rather strange? No, it is not strange at all, but merely a particularly interesting example of the fight between large and small dogs, between well-fed and ill-fed dogs. It is not a big rift, but neither is it small. It is an irritating and painful contradiction. But such fights, such rifts, such contradictions are of use to the revolutionary people. We must turn to good account all such fights, rifts and contradictions in the enemy camp and turn them against our present main enemy. Summing up the question of class relations, we may say that TH's basic change in the situation, namely, the Japanese invasion of China south of the Great Wall, has changed the relationship among various classes in China, strengthening the camp of national revolution and weakening that of counter-revolution. Now let us discuss the situation in the camp of China's nation of revolution. First, the Red Army. As you know, comrades, for almost a year and a half the 3 main contingents of the Chinese Red Army have carried out great shifts of position. The 6th Army Group led by Gen Paishuan and other comrades began to shift to Comrade Ho Lung's Area 19 in August last year, and in October we ourselves started to shift Position 20 in March this year. The Red Army in the Sichuan-Shensi Board Area 21 began its shift. All 3 Red Army contingents have abandoned their old positions and moved to new regions. These great shifts have turned the old areas into guerrilla zones. The Red Army has been considerably weakened in the process. From this aspect of the overall situation, we can see that the enemy has won a temporary and partial victory, while we have suffered a temporary and partial defeat. Is the statement correct? I think it is. For it is a statement of fact. However, some people, Chang Kuo-tao 22 for instance, say that the Central Red Army 23 has failed. Is that correct? No. For it is not a statement of fact. In approaching a problem, a Marxist should see the whole as well as the parts. A frog in a well says, the sky is no bigger than the mouth of the well. That is untrue, for the sky is not just the size of the mouth of the well. If it said, a part of the sky is the size of the mouth of well, that would be true, for it tallies with the facts. What we say is that in one respect the Red Army has failed, that is, failed to maintain its original positions, but in another respect it has won a victory, that is, in executing the plan of the Long March. In one respect the enemy won a victory, that is, in occupying our original positions, but in another respect he has failed, that is, failed to execute his plan of encirclement 160 MAOTSE tongue, and suppression, and of pursuit and suppression. That is the inappropriate formulation, for we have completed the Long March. Speaking of the Long March, one may ask, what is significance? We answer that the Long March is the first of its key in the annals of history, that it is a manifesto, a propaganda force, seeding machine. Since Panku divided the heavens from the earth and the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors 24 reigned, has histo ever witnessed a long march such as ours? For 12 months we under daily reconnaissance and bombing from the skies by scores planes, while on land we were encircled and pursued, obstructed and intercepted by a huge force of several 100,000 men, while we encountered untold difficulties and dangers on the way. Yet using our 2 legs we swept across a distance of more than 20,000 li through the length and breadth of 11 provinces. Ellis asked, has history ever known a long march to equal ours? No, never. The Long March is a manifesto. It has proclaimed to the world the Red Army is an army of heroes, while the imperialists and the rotting dogs, Chiang Kai-shek and his like, are impotent. It has claimed their utter failure to encircle, pursue, obstruct and intercept us. The Long March is also a propaganda force. It has announced some 200 million people in 11 provinces that the road of the army is their only road to liberation. Without the Long March, how could the broad masses have learned so quickly about the existence of the great truth which the Red Army embodies? The Long March is also a seeding machine. In the 11 provinces it has sown ma seeds which will sprout, leaf, blossom, and bear fruit, and will yield a harvest in the future. In a word, the Long March has ended victory for us and defeat for the enemy. Who brought the Long March victory? The Communist Party. Without the Communist Party, Long March of this kind would have been inconceivable. The China Communist Party, its leadership, its cadres and its members fared difficulties or hardships. Whoever questions our ability to lead the revolutionary war will fall into the morass of opportunism. A new situation arose as soon as the Long March was over. In the battle to lock in the Central Red Army and the Northwestern Red Army fighting in fraternal solidarity, shattered the traitor Chiang Kai-shek campaign of encirclement and suppression against the Shensi-Kan border Area 25 and thus laid the cornerstone for the task undertaken by the Central Committee of the Party, the task of setting up T-national headquarters of the revolution in northwestern China and tactics against Japanese imperialism. 16. This being the situation with regard to the main body of the Red Army, what about the guerrilla warfare in the southern provinces? Our guerrilla forces there have suffered some setbacks but have not been wiped out. In many places, they are reasserting themselves, growing and expanding. 26. In the Kuomintang areas, the workers' struggle is now moving beyond the factory walls, and from being an economic struggle is becoming a political struggle. A heroic working-class struggle against the Japanese and the traitors is now in intense ferment and, judging by the situation, it will erupt before long. The peasants' struggle has never ceased. Harassed by aggression from abroad, by difficulties at home and by natural disasters, peasants have unleashed widespread struggles in the form of guerrilla warfare, mass uprisings and famine riots. The anti-Japanese guerrilla warfare now going on in the northeastern provinces and eastern Hokkaido is their reply to the attacks of Japanese imperialism. The student movement has already grown considerably and will certainly go on doing so. But this movement can sustain itself and break through the martial law imposed by the traitors and the policy of disruption and massacre practiced by the police, the secret service agents, the scoundrels in the educational world and the fascists only if it is coordinated with the struggles of the workers, peasants and soldiers. We have already dealt with the vacillation of the national bourgeoisie, the rich peasants and small landlords in the possibility that they may actually participate in the anti-Japanese struggle. The minority nationalities, and especially the people of in Mongolia who are directly menaced by Japanese imperialism, are now rising up in struggle. As time goes on, their struggle will merge with that of the people in northern China and with the operations of the Red Army in the northwest. All this indicates that the revolutionary situation is now changing from a localized into a nationwide one and that it is gradually changing from a state of unevenness to a certain degree of evenness. We are on the eve of a great change. The task of the party is to form a revolutionary national united front by combining the activities of the Red Army with all the activities of the workers, the peasants, the students, the petty bourgeoisie and the national bourgeoisie throughout the country. 160. MAOTSE tongue, the National United Front, having surveyed the situation with regard to both the counter-revolution and the revolution, we shall find it easy to define the party tactical tasks. What is the basic tactical task of the party? It is none other to form a broad revolutionary national united front. When the revolutionary situation changes, revolutionary tactics and methods of leadership must change accordingly. The task of Japanese imperialists, the collaborators and the traitors is to turn China into a colony, while our task is to turn China into a free independent country with full territorial integrity. To win independence and freedom for China is a great task. Demands that we fight against foreign imperialism and the Dome's counter-revolutionary forces. Japanese imperialism is determined to bludgeon its way deep into China. As yet the domestic counter-revolutionary forces of the big landlord and comprador classes are stronger than the people's revolutionary forces. The overthrow Japanese imperialism and the counter-revolutionary forces in Kai cannot be accomplished in a day, and we must be prepared to devote a long time to it. It cannot be accomplished by small forces, and W must therefore accumulate great forces. In China, as in the world as a whole, the counter-revolutionary forces are weaker than before, the revolutionary forces stronger. This estimate is correct, representing one aspect of the matter. At the same time, it must be pointed out the counter-revolutionary forces in China and in the world as a whole are stronger than the revolutionary forces for the time being. Estimate is also correct, representing another aspect of them at the uneven political and economic development of China gives rise to the uneven development of her revolution. As a rule, revolution starts, grows and triumphs first in those places in which the counter-revolutionary forces are comparatively weak, while it has yet to stop or grows very slowly in those places in which they are strong. So has long been the situation for the Chinese Revolution. It can be predicted that the general revolutionary situation will grow further at certain stages in the future, but that the unevenness will remain. The transformation of this unevenness into a general evenness will require a very long time, very great efforts, and the parties application of a correct line. Seeing that the revolutionary war led by the Communist and tactics against Japanese imperialism 16, Communist Party of the Soviet Union 28 took 3 years to conclude, W must be prepared to devote to the already protracted revolutionary war led by the Chinese Communist Party the longer time necessary to dispose of the domestic and foreign counter-revolutionary force finally and thoroughly. The kind of impatience that was formerly displayed will never do. Moreover, sound revolutionary tactics must be worked out. We will never achieve great things if we keep on milling around within narrow confines. This does not mean that in Chin things have to be done slowly. No, they must be done boldly, because the danger of national subjugation does not allow us to slacken for a moment. From now on the revolution will certainly develop much faster than before, for both China and the world are approaching new period of war and revolution. For all that, China's revolutionary war will remain a protracted one. This follows from the strength of imperialism and the uneven development of the revolution. We say that the present situation is one in which a new high tide in the national revolution is imminent and in which China is on the eve of a new nationwide revolution. This is one characteristic of the present revolutionary situation. This is a fact, and it represents one aspect of the matter. But we must also say that imperialism is still a force to be earnestly reckoned with, that the unevenness in the development of the revolutionary forces is a serious weakness, and that to defy our enemies we must be prepared to fight a protracted war. This is another characteristic of the present revolutionary situation. This too is a fact, and represents another aspect of the matter. Both characteristics, both facts, teach and urge us to revise our tactics and change our ways of disposing our forces and carrying on the struggle to suit the situation. The present situation demands that we boldly discard all closed-doorism, form a broad united front and guard against adventurism. We must not plunge into decisive battles until the time is ripened unless we have the necessary strength. Here I shall not discuss the relation of adventurism to closed-doorism, or the possible dangers of adventurism as events unfold on a larger scale. That can be left for later. For the moment I shall confine myself to explaining that united front tactics and closed-door tactic are diametrically opposed. The former requires the recruiting of large forces for the purpose of surrounding and annihilating the enemy. The latter means fighting single-handed in desperate combat against a formidable enemy. 164 MAOTSE Tongue, the advocates of united front tactics say, if we are to make proper estimate of the possibility of forming a broad revolutionary national united front, a proper estimate must be made of the change that may occur in the alignment of revolutionary and counter-revolutionary forces in China resulting from the attempts of Japanese imperialism to turn China into a colony. Without a proper estimate of the strong and weak points of the Japanese and Chinese counter-revolutionary forces and of the Chinese revolutionary forces, we shall unable fully to understand the necessity of organizing a broad revolutionary national united front, or to take firm measures to break down closed-doorism, or to use the united front as a means of organizing and rallying millions of people and all the armies that are potential friendly to the revolution for the purpose of advancing to strike at our main target, namely, Japanese imperialism and its running dogs, Chinese traitors. Or to use this tactical weapon of ours to strike at the main target before us, but instead we shall aim at a variety of targets so that our bullets will hit not the principal enemy but our less enemies or even our allies. This would mean failure to single out the principal enemy and waste of ammunition. It would mean inability to close in and isolate him. It would mean inability to draw to our sea all those in the enemy camp and on the enemy front who have joined them under compulsion, and those who were our enemies yesterday but may become our friends today. It would in fact mean helping the enemy, holding back, isolating and constricting the revolutio and bringing it to a low ebb and even to defeat. The advocates of closed-door tactics say the above arguments are all wrong. The forces of the revolution must be pure, absolutely pure, and the road of the revolution must be straight, absolutely straight. Nothing is correct except what is literally recorded in Holy Writ. The national bourgeoisie is entirely and eternally counter-revolutionary. Not an inch must be conceded to the rich peasants. The yellow tri-unions must be fought tooth and nail. If we shake hands with T.S. Tenkai, we must call him a counter-revolutionary at the same moment. Was there ever a cat that did not love fish, or a warlord W was not a counter-revolutionary? Intellectuals are three-day revolutionaries whom it is dangerous to recruit. It follows therefore closed-doorism is the sole wonder-working magic, while the unit front is an opportunist tactic. Comrades, which is right, the united front or closed-doorism, which indeed is approved by Marxism-Leninism? I answer with OO and tactics against Japanese imperialism. 16. The slightest hesitation, the united front and not closed-doorism. 3-year-olds have many ideas which are right, but they cannot be entrusted with serious national or world affairs because they do not understand them yet. Marxism-Leninism is opposed to the infantile disorder found in the revolutionary ranks. This infantile disorder is just what the confirmed exponents of closed-doorism advocate. Like every other activity in the world, revolution always follows tortuous road and never a straight one. The alignment of forces in revolutionary and counter-revolutionary camps can change, just as everything else in the world changes. The party's new tactics of broad united front start from the two fundamental facts that Japan's imperialism is bent on reducing all China to a colony and that China revolutionary forces still have serious weaknesses. In order to attack the forces of the counter-revolution, what the revolutionary force need today is to organize millions upon millions of the masses and move a mighty revolutionary army into action. The plain truth is that only a force of such magnitude can crush the Japanese imperialists and the traitors and collaborators. Therefore, united front tactics are the only Marxist-Leninist tactics. The tactics of closed-doorism are on the contrary, the tactics of the regal isolationist. Closed-doorism just drives the fish into deep waters and the sparrows into thickets, and it will drive the millions upon millions of the masses, this mighty army, over to the enemy's side, which will certainly win his acclaim. In practice, closed-doorism is the faithful servant of Japanese imperialists and the traitors and collaborators. Its adherents talk of the pure, and the straight will be condemned by Marxist-Leninists and commended by the Japanese imperialists. We definitely want no closed-doorism. What we want is the revolutionary nation, a united front, which will spell death to the Japanese imperialists and the traitors and collaborators. The People's Republic 29, if our government has hitherto been based on the alliance of workers, the peasants and the urban petty bourgeoisie, from now on it must be so transformed as to include also the members of all old classes who are willing to take part in the national revolution. 166 MAOTSE Tongue, at the present time, the basic task of such a government should be to oppose the annexation of China by Japanese imperialism. It will have a broader representation so that it may include those who are interested only in the national revolution and not in the agrarian revolution, and even, if they so desire, those who may oppose Japan imperialism and its running dogs, though they are not opposed to European and U.S. imperialists because of their close ties with the latter. Therefore, as a matter of principle, the program of such government should be in keeping with the basic task of fighting Japanese imperialism and its lackeys, and we should modify our policies accordingly. The special feature on the revolutionary side at present is the existence of a well-steeled Communist Party and Red Army. This of crucial importance. Great difficulties would arise if they didn't exist. Why? Because the traitors and collaborators in China are numerous and powerful and are sure to devise every possible manner to wreck the united front. They will sow dissension by means of intimidation and bribery and by maneuvering among various grouping and will employ their armies to oppress and crush, one by one, those weaker than themselves who want to part company with the and join us in fighting Japan. All this would hardly be avoidable the anti-Japanese government and army were to lack this vital fact, that is, the Communist Party and the Red Army. The revolution failed in 1927 chiefly because, with the opportunist line then prevailing in the Communist Party, no effort was made to expand our own ranks, the workers and peasants movement and the armed forces led by the Communist Party, and exclusive reliance was placed on a tempora ally, the Kuomintang. The result was that when imperialism ordered its lackeys, the landlord and comprador classes, to spread the numerous tentacles and draw over first Chiang Kai-shek and Wang Ching-wei, the revolution suffered defeat. In those days the revolutionary United Front had no mainstay, no strong revolutionary armed forces, and so when the defections came thick and fast, the Communist Party was forced to fight single-handed and was powerless to foil the tactics of crushing their opponents one by one we were adopted by the imperialists and the Chinese counter-revolutionaries. True, we had the troops under Ho Lung and Ye Ting, but they were not yet politically consolidated, and the party was very skilled in leading them, so that they were finally defeated. The lesson we paid for with our blood was that the lack of a hard co-o and tactics against Japanese imperialism 16 of revolutionary forces brings the revolution to defeat. Today things are quite different. Now we have a strong Communist Party and strong Red Army, and we also have the base areas of the Red Army. Not only are the Communist Party and the Red Army serving as the initiator of the National United Front against Japan today, but in the future too they will inevitably become the powerful mainstay of China's anti-Japanese government and army, capable of preventing the Japanese imperialists and Chiang Kai-shek from carrying through their policy of disrupting this united front. However, we must be very vigilant because the Japanese imperialists and Chiang Kai-shek will undoubtedly resort to every possible form of intimidation and bribery and of maneuvering among the various groupings. Naturally, we cannot expect every section of the broad nation a united front against Japan to be as firm as the Communist Party and the Red Army. In the course of their activities some bad element may withdraw from the united front under the influence of the enemy. However, we need not fear the loss of such people. While bad elements may drop out under the enemy's influence, good people will come in under ours. The National United Front will live and grow along as the Communist Party and the Red Army live and grow. Such is the leading role of the Communist Party and the Red Army in the National United Front. The Communists are no longer political infant and are able to take care of themselves and to handle relations with their allies. If the Japanese imperialists and Chiang Kai-shek can maneuver in relation to the revolutionary forces, the Communist Party can do the same in relation to the counter-revolutionary forces. If they can draw bad elements in our ranks over to their side, we can equally well draw their bad elements, good ones from our point of view, over to our side. If we can draw a larger number over to our side, this will deplete the enemy's ranks and strengthen ours. In short, two basic forces are now locked in struggle, and in the nature of things all the forces in between will have to line up on one side or the other. The Japanese imperialists' policy of subjugating China and Chiang Kai-shek's policy of betraying China will inevitably drive many people over to our side, either directly into joining the ranks of the Communist Party and the Red Army or into forming a united front with us. This will come about unless we pursue closed-door tactics. Why change the Workers' and Peasants' Republic into a People Republic? 168 MAOTSE tongue, our government represents not only the workers and peasant but the whole nation. This has been implicit in our slogan of a Work and Peasants Democratic Republic, because the workers and peasant constitute 80 to 90% of the population. The 10-point program 30 adopted by the 6th National Congress of our party embodies the interests of the whole nation and not of the work and peasants alone. But the present situation requires us to change our slogan, to change it into one of the People's Republic. The reason is that Japanese invasion has altered class relations in China. It is now possible not only for the petty bourgeoisie but even for the national bourgeoisie to join the anti-Japanese struggle. The People's Republic will definitely not represent the interests of the enemy classes. On the contrary, it will stand in direct opposite to the landlord and comprador classes, the lackeys of imperialists, and will not count them among the people. In the same way, Chiang Kai-shek's national government of the Republic of China represents only the wealthiest, but not the common people whom does not count as part of the nation. As 80 to 90% of China population is made up of workers and peasants, the People's Republic ought to represent their interests first and foremost. However, throwing off imperialist oppression to make China free and independent, and by throwing off landlord oppression to free China from semi-feudalism, the People's Republic will benefit not only the work and peasants but other sections of the people too. The sum total, the interests of the workers, peasants and the rest of the payoff, constitutes the interests of the whole Chinese nation. The comprador and the landlord classes also live on Chinese soil, but as they have no regard for the national interests, their interests clash with those of the majority. This small minority are the only ones that we agree with and are clashing with, and we therefore have the right to see ourselves the representatives of the whole nation. There is, of course, a clash of interests between the working class and the national bourgeoisie. We shall not be able to extend the national revolution successfully unless the working class, the vanguard of the national revolution, is accorded political and economic rights and is enabled to direct its strength against imperialism or its rutting dogs, the traitors. However, if the national bourgeoisie joins the anti-imperialist united front, the working class and the national bourgeoisie will have interests in common. In the period and tactics against Japanese imperialism 16, the bourgeois democratic revolution, the People's Republic will no expropriate private property other than imperialist and feudal private property, and so far from confiscating the national bourgeoisie's industrial and commercial enterprises, it will encourage their development. We shall protect every national capitalist who does not suffer the imperialists or the Chinese traitors. In the stage of democratic revolution there are limits to the struggle between labor and capital. The labor laws of the People's Republic will protect the interests of the workers, but will not prevent the national bourgeoisie from making profits or developing their industrial and commercial enterprises, because such development is bad for imperialism and good for Chinese people. Thus it is clear that the People's Republic will represent the interests of all strata opposed to imperialism and the feudal forces. The government of the People's Republic will be based primarily on the workers and peasants, but will also include representatives of other classes which are opposed to imperialism and the feudal forces. But is it not dangerous to let the representatives of such class join the government of the People's Republic? No. The workers and peasants are the basic masses of the Republic. In giving the urban petty bourgeoisie, the intellectuals and other sections of the population who support the anti-imperialist and anti-feudal program right to have a voice in the government of the People's Republic and to work in it, the right to vote and stand for election. We must not allow the interests of the workers and peasants, the basic masses, to be violated. The essential part of our program must be the protection of their interests. With their representatives comprising majority in this government and with the Communist Party exercising leadership and working within it, there is a guarantee that the participation of other classes will present no danger. It is perfectly obvious that the Chinese revolution at the present stage is still a bourgeois democratic and not a proletarian socialist revolution in nature. Only the counter-revolutionary Trotskyites 31 talk such nonsense as that China has already completed her bourgeois democratic revolution and that any further revolution can only be socialist. The Revolution O 1924-27 was a bourgeois democratic revolution, which was not carried to completion but failed. The agrarian revolution which we have led since 1927 is also a bourgeois democratic revolution, because it is directed not against capitalism, but against imperialism and feudalism. This will remain true of our revolution for quite a long time to come. 170 MAOTSE tongue, basically. The workers, the peasants and the urban petty bourgeoisie are still the motive forces of the revolution, but now maybe the national bourgeoisie as well. The change in the revolution will come later. In the future democratic revolution will inevitably be transformed into a social revolution. As to when the transition will take place, that will depend on the presence of the necessary conditions, and it may take quite long time. We should not hold forth about transition until all necessary political and economic conditions are present and until it is advantageous and not detrimental to the overwhelming majority of the people throughout China. It is wrong to have any doubts this matter and expect the transition to take place soon, as some of our comrades did when they maintained that the transition in revolution would begin the moment the democratic revolution began triumph in key provinces. They did so because they failed to understand what kind of country China is politically and economically, to realize that, compared with Russia, China will find it more difficult and require much more time and effort to complete her democratic revolution politically and economically. International support. Finally, a word is necessary about the relation between the China and the world revolution. Ever since the monster of imperialism came into being, the affairs of the world have become so closely interwoven that it is impossible to separate them. We Chinese have the spirit to fight the enemy, the last drop of our blood, the determination to recover our low territory by our own efforts, and the ability to stand on our own feet in the family of nations. But this does not mean that we can dispense with international support. No, today international support is necessary for the revolutionary struggle of any nation or country. Is the old adage, in the spring and autumn era there were righteous wars. 32 This is even truer of imperialism today, for it only the oppressed nations and the oppressed classes that can wage just wars. All wars anywhere in the world in which the people rise up to fight their oppressors are just struggles. The February-October revolutions in Russia were just wars. The revolutions and tactics against Japanese imperialism 17, the people in various European countries after World War I were just struggles. In China, the Anti-Opium War, 33 the War of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, 34 the Yiho-Tuan War, 35 the Revolutionary War of 1911, 36 the Northern Expedition of 1926-27, the Agrarian Revolutionary War from 1927 to the present, and the present resistance to Japan and punitive actions against traitors. These are all just wars. Now, in the mounting tide of nationwide struggle against Japan and of worldwide struggle against fascism, just wars will spread all over China and the globe. All just wars support each other while all unjust wars should be turned into just wars. This is Leninist line 37. Our war against Japan needs the support of the people of the whole world and, above all, the support of the people of Soviet Union, which they will certainly give us because they are bound together in a common cause. In the past, the Chinese revolutionary forces were temporarily cut off from the world revolutionary forces by Chiang Kai-shek, and in this sense we were isolated. Now the situation has changed, and changed to our advantage. Henceforth it will continue to change to our advantage. We can no longer be isolated. This provides a necessary condition for China victory in the war against Japan and for victory in the Chinese Revolution. Notes: 1. The 21 demands on the Yuan Shikai government were present by the Japanese imperialists on January 18, 1915. On May 7, they sent an ultimatum demanding a reply within 48 hours. The demands were divided into 5 parts. The first 4 contained the following: to transfer to Japan the rights German had seized in Shantung and to grant Japan additional rights in the province. To grant rights to the Japanese to lease or own land in southern Manchuria and eastern Mongolia and to establish residence, engage in industry and commerce, and have exclusive railway building and mining rights there. To reorganize the Hanyeping Iron and Steel Company as a joint Sino-Japanese enterprise. And to undertake no to lease or cede any harbors or islands along China's coastline to any third power. The 5th part contained demands that Japan should control China's political, financial, military and police affairs and should build vital railway lines connecting the provinces of Hubei, Jiangxi and Guangdong. 172 MAOTSE Tung, 1911, he usurped the presidency of the Republic and On tactics against Japanese imperialism 17. 174 MAOTSE Tung, participated in On tactics against Japanese imperial. 176 MAOTSE Tung, by himself from the Shensi camp. On tactics against Japanese imperialism 17. 178 MAOTSE Tung, Kwantung fought a war of resistance. A quell the British Corps, which was spontaneously organized. Problems of